What if the past was hiding secrets just beyond our reach? Ancient civilizations, vanished cities, and enigmas that defy explanation whisper to us across time, daring us to follow down winding corridors of history. Some stories are etched in crumbling ruins, others in forgotten texts, and a few linger in the shadows, never fully understood. Why did great powers rise and vanish overnight? What mysteries lie buried beneath deserts, oceans, or dense forests waiting to be uncovered? Tonight, we trace these trails, exploring the unexplained, the eerie, the astonishing. So sit back, relax, and let's dive into the top 22 history mystery rabbit holes. Rising silently from the rugged hills of northern Syria, the Qaramel towers have stood for centuries, their weathered stones bathed in the soft golden light of dawn. From a distance, they appear almost ordinary, simple cylindrical structures, unremarkable at first glance. Yet, as one draws nearer, the enormity of their presence becomes undeniable. Each tower, carefully built from limestone, seems both ancient and deliberate, a sentinel from a forgotten era. They occupy a landscape that is at once harsh and hauntingly beautiful, dotted with olive groves and the slow, meandering paths of traders who once crossed these lands. Scholars trace their construction to the early Bronze Age, around 3000 BC, suggesting they were part of a defensive network designed to protect the fertile plains and trade routes of the region. Their alignment, remarkably uniform, hints at a purpose beyond mere shelter. Some of the tower's walls are over 2 meters thick, while others contain mysterious internal chambers whose functions remain debated. Were they watchtowers, as many mainstream archaeologists assert, keeping vigilant eyes on caravans and approaching armies? Or did they serve a more complex role, perhaps as ritual sites or territorial markers, entwined with the spiritual and social fabric of the communities who built them? The deeper one studies the Qaramel towers, the more questions emerge. There are subtle differences between towers, subtle variations in construction techniques and materials, which some suggest indicate different periods of occupation or even shifts in the cultures that erected them. One tower, remarkably circular and taller than its neighbors, contains niches carved deep into the walls, spaces that seem too precise to be merely decorative. What purpose did these hold? Some theorists propose that they may have been used to store sacred artifacts or offerings, a bridge between the mortal and the divine. Others suggest astronomical alignment, pointing toward certain stars or celestial events, hinting that the towers were part of a larger cosmological understanding long lost to time. Adding to the mystery are the layers of myth and local legend. For centuries, villagers have spoken of strange lights at twilight, small orbs that appear near the towers before vanishing into the night sky. Some claim that the towers hum faintly at certain times of the year, resonating with winds that pass through the narrow openings and internal chambers. While modern science might attribute these phenomena to acoustics or optical illusions, the persistence of such stories raises an unavoidable question. Did the builders anticipate or even intend these effects, embedding a hidden language of nature and sound into stone? Excavations around the towers have uncovered fragments of pottery, rudimentary tools, and occasional inscriptions, yet they reveal little about the daily lives of those who lived nearby. The absence of large settlements nearby fuels speculation. Were the towers the center of a vast, now vanished city? Or were they deliberately isolated, standing as beacons across the hills for reasons we have yet to comprehend? Some fringe theories even propose connections to long-lost civilizations, suggesting that the tower's construction reflects knowledge of engineering and geometry ahead of its time. While such ideas remain speculative, they underscore the sense that the Qaramel towers are more than mere stone. They are a puzzle, a silent record of human ambition and mystery. As the sun dips below the horizon, casting long shadows over the towers. It is easy to imagine the generations of eyes that once scanned these hills. The Qaramel towers endure as monuments to ingenuity, resilience, and perhaps secrets that will never be fully revealed. They remind us that history is rarely a straightforward tale, and that some structures built millennia ago still guard questions that defy simple answers. What drove their creators to invest such effort in these towers? And what might remain hidden within their ancient walls, waiting for those patient enough to listen to the whispers of stone and wind? From the silent hills of northern Syria, where the Qaramel towers still guard their millennia-old secrets, we now turn our gaze southward, across shifting sands and the Nile's fertile expanse, to the sprawling necropolis of Saqqara. Here, history is carved in stone, yet some mysteries remain hidden beneath the surface, waiting patiently for discovery. Amid the well-known tombs and pyramids lies an enigma that has captured the curiosity of archaeologists and enthusiasts alike. A massive, sealed sarcophagus, unlike any other, one that appears to contain the remains of an unknown animal. The sarcophagus itself is imposing. Roughly 2 meters tall and over 4 meters long, it rests in a dimly lit chamber beneath layers of ancient stone, its surface etched with hieroglyphs and subtle markings that hint at its significance. Unlike typical animal burials, which often commemorate cats, birds, or sacred bulls, this coffin suggests something far stranger. The inscriptions are cryptic, containing symbols that are difficult to translate fully, blending familiar Egyptian motifs with unusual depictions whose purpose remains elusive. The craftsmanship is meticulous, with each edge perfectly smoothed, the corners sharply defined, and the lid fitted with extraordinary precision. So precise, in fact, that even modern archaeologists struggle to open it without risking damage. Dating to the late period of ancient Egypt, roughly between 664 and 332 BC, the sarcophagus sits among other well-documented burials of the Saqqara necropolis. Traditionally, animals were mummified as offerings to the gods, or in reverence to sacred beings like cats and ibises. But this sarcophagus defies easy categorization. Early reports suggest that X-ray scans reveal forms inside that do not clearly resemble any known animal. The shape seems elongated, yet robust. The skeletal structure, if truly animal, does not match common domestic or wild species from ancient Egypt. Could this be a rare species long lost to history, preserved here as a sacred entity? Or is it possible that what lies within was deliberately stylized or altered for ritual purposes, taking on a form that challenges contemporary understanding? Scholars have long debated the purpose of such burials. Mainstream explanations lean toward symbolic interpretation. Perhaps the coffin was intended as a votive offering to a god whose attributes were partly animalistic, a practice not uncommon in Egyptian theology. Others suggest that the creators may have been experimenting with preservation techniques, seeking to enshrine an extraordinary specimen for reasons we may never fully comprehend. Yet, speculation has also taken on more unusual forms. Some researchers have posited that the sarcophagus could contain a hybrid or mutated creature, one known only to the priests of the time, while fringe theories suggest it might even point toward knowledge of species now extinct, or entities entirely outside the natural record. Adding to the intrigue are the accounts of unusual phenomena surrounding the site. Archaeologists working near the sarcophagus have reported faint whispers, untraceable drafts, and a persistent sense of unease when entering the chamber. While environmental explanations, acoustics, wind tunnels, or the eerie quality of enclosed stone likely account for some of these observations, the consistency of such reports across decades invites a more contemplative reflection. Did the ancient builders anticipate these subtle effects, creating a space that engages not just the eyes but the senses and imagination long after the original rituals faded into history. Photographs and scans provide only partial insight. The sarcophagus is too fragile for prolonged exposure, and the contents remain largely inaccessible. Initial examinations show that the wrappings are unusually thick, layered in a way that suggests either exceptional reverence or the need to contain something powerful. The resin and oils used are of high quality, exceeding what is typically found in other animal burials of the period, leading some to wonder whether the intent was merely ceremonial or if there was an additional purpose, one now lost to time. The absence of contemporary records describing such a burial adds to the mystery. Ancient texts are silent. Temple accounts, tomb inscriptions, and papyri offer no explanation, leaving modern interpreters to rely on speculation informed by fragments and inference. Yet, despite all these unanswered questions, the sarcophagus stands as a testament to human curiosity, ambition, and reverence. It challenges our assumptions about what the ancients valued, what they feared, and what they sought to preserve for eternity. Unlike the towers of Qaramel, which gaze silently over hills, this coffin holds its secret within, locked away, demanding patience, respect, and careful attention. Could it be that we have glimpsed only a fraction of the story, a single frame in a narrative stretching across centuries? And if so, what might remain undiscovered, lying in silence beneath Saqqara's sands, waiting for the right moment or the right observer to reveal itself? As evening falls over the necropolis, the shadows of the pyramids stretching across the desert, the unknown animal sarcophagus remains untouched, enigmatic, and profoundly silent. It reminds us that history is not simply a record of what is known, but a landscape dotted with mysteries, hidden, subtle, and persistent. And it leaves us with a question that lingers long after the cameras stop rolling. What truly lies within? And why was it deemed important enough to preserve so carefully, so deliberately, for all time? From the silent sands of Saqqara, where the unknown animal sarcophagus guards its secrets beneath layers of stone and history, our journey now leads us far to the northeast, to the tranquil yet enigmatic waters of Issyk-Kul, the vast lake cradled within the mountains of Kyrgyzstan. At first glance, Issyk-Kul appears serene, its deep sapphire waters reflecting peaks dusted with snow and a horizon that seems infinite. Fishermen drift across its surface in small wooden boats, and the wind carries whispers of the mountains into the valleys below. But beneath this placid exterior lies a submerged world, one that challenges our understanding of human history and hints at stories long hidden beneath the waves. For centuries, local legends have spoken of ancient settlements swallowed by the lake, towns and temples lost to time, leaving only echoes in folk memory. These tales persisted as little more than myth until the 20th century, when divers and archaeologists began to discover what might be the remnants of structures lying at remarkable depths, between 10 and 40 meters below the surface. Stone foundations, pathways, and walls emerge intermittently in sonar scans, suggesting a level of sophistication that rivals other known civilizations of the region. Some formations appear intentionally arranged, forming squares and circles that hint at public spaces or ritual sites. Could these be the remains of thriving communities, carefully submerged or catastrophically flooded millennia ago? Radiocarbon dating of nearby artifacts places some of these structures as far back as 1000 BC, yet the precise timeline is elusive. The geology of the region complicates matters. Issyk-Kul is a tectonic lake, formed by the shifting of massive fault lines and prone to fluctuations in water level over thousands of years. Mainstream explanations suggest that sudden geological events, such as landslides or seismic activity, could have rapidly inundated coastal settlements, preserving them under a blanket of cold, oxygen-poor water. Yet there are anomalies that challenge this narrative. Certain structures appear far from any current shoreline, in areas that would have been deep underwater even during periods of lower lake levels. How did these buildings come to rest where they do, and who were the people who constructed them? Adding to the mystery are artifacts retrieved from the lakebed. Pottery fragments, stone tools, and intricately carved stone steles hint at a culture capable of remarkable craftsmanship. Some carvings bear symbols reminiscent of steppe nomadic cultures, while others seem closer in style to the urbanized civilizations of Central Asia, suggesting a possible fusion of traditions. It is a convergence of worlds, a meeting point of nomadic and settled, mundane and ceremonial, the ordinary lives of families alongside structures that may have held spiritual or governmental significance. Yet despite these findings, the majority of the submerged settlement remains unexplored, shrouded in darkness and sediment, leaving archaeologists to speculate on the full extent of its complexity. The lake itself seems to guard its secrets. Divers report a sense of stillness that borders on eerie, a calm punctuated by occasional creaks of underwater currents against stone. Sonar imaging reveals patterns that almost appear deliberate: parallel rows, circular enclosures, and linear foundations. Yet no inscriptions or texts have been found that confirm the identities or purpose of these communities. Some researchers have suggested that Issyk-Kul may have been a center of ritual activity, a sacred site partially abandoned and intentionally flooded, echoing traditions seen elsewhere in the ancient world. Others propose that these settlements may have been lost to a sudden environmental catastrophe, an earthquake or landslide that submerged entire towns in an instant. Speculative theories have flourished as well. Fringe researchers point to the possibility of a civilization entirely forgotten by history, one whose architecture and urban planning demonstrate knowledge thought beyond the scope of steppe or highland cultures of the time. Some suggest connections to the fabled Hyperborean peoples mentioned in ancient texts, or to trade networks spanning distant regions, linking Issyk-Kul to far-off civilizations through caravans that skirted mountain passes and deserts. While such claims remain unverified, they underscore the tantalizing sense that what lies beneath the waters may hold answers, or more questions, about human adaptation, ambition, and the fragility of life in the face of nature's forces. Modern technology offers glimpses but no certainty. Sonar mapping has revealed structures that defy easy categorization: elongated platforms resembling docks, stepped terraces that could once have supported multi-level buildings, and circular enclosures whose purpose remains uncertain. Yet even the most detailed surveys cannot capture the full story, leaving room for the imagination to wander. What daily life might have looked like for these submerged communities? Did children once play along these now sunken streets? Did ceremonies take place in the circular plazas we glimpse in the murky depths? And, most intriguingly, did the builders anticipate the lake's eventual rise, leaving their homes to the water as a deliberate act, or were they victims of an unforgiving natural event? Issyk-Kul's mystery endures not only in its submerged settlements, but in the quiet of its surface, where the sun glints off waves that conceal more than they reveal. Each ripple seems to hide fragments of a lost past, whispers of lives that existed in harmony with the harsh but breathtaking landscape of the highlands. The lake, ever-changing and eternal, is both cradle and tomb, preserving what is fragile while keeping the unknown intact. As we peer beneath its waters, we are reminded that history is rarely confined to land or written record. It often rests silently, waiting for those patient enough to observe, question, and wonder. The submerged settlements of Issyk-Kul challenge us to confront the limits of knowledge, They invite reflection on the impermanence of human endeavor and the persistence of mystery in places that feel, at once, both familiar and alien. What other stories might be hidden beneath the lake's surface, just out of reach? What secrets have the mountains and waters safeguarded through centuries, waiting for discovery? As night falls over the tranquil expanse, one cannot help but wonder. Beneath the deep blue of Issyk-Kul, does the past whisper still? And if so, what is it trying to tell us? From the quiet depths of Issyk-Kul, where ancient settlements lie hidden beneath sapphire waters, we now journey westward across continents and centuries to the dense, verdant expanses of the Bolivian Amazon, where one of the most astonishing and little-known feats of urban planning in human history quietly awaits discovery: the Casarabe Urban Earthwork Network. Unlike the stone monuments and tombs of Egypt or the submerged ruins of Kyrgyzstan, here the architecture is of earth and water, shaped with deliberate precision into an intricate landscape that challenges our understanding of pre-Columbian civilizations. At first glance, the region appears wild and impenetrable, a maze of tropical forest, swamps, and slow-moving rivers. But aerial surveys and satellite imagery reveal a hidden order beneath the canopy. Vast geometric patterns, circular and rectangular plazas, wide causeways, and interconnected canals stretching across hundreds of square kilometers. The earthworks, many of them raised several meters above the surrounding floodplain, form an urban network unlike anything expected in such a seemingly remote and forested region. From above, one can trace roads that intersect at right angles, circular plazas framed by concentric ditches, and rectangular platforms that may have served as ceremonial centers or elite residential compounds. How did such a sophisticated network emerge in what was long considered an environment hostile to large-scale settlement? Archaeologists estimate that these structures were built between 500 and 1400 AD, well before sustained European contact in the region. This urban network reflects an advanced knowledge of engineering and hydrology. The raised roads allowed inhabitants to navigate the seasonal floods, while extensive canal systems suggest not only transport and trade, but also sophisticated water management. Soil analysis shows that the inhabitants enriched the land to sustain agriculture, creating fertile plots capable of feeding large populations in a dense and interconnected urban landscape. Yet, despite this level of organization, the civilization responsible for the Casarabe network left no written records. Its people remain largely anonymous, their language, culture, and political structures reconstructed only through the land itself. Mainstream interpretations suggest the Casarabe complex was a series of interconnected settlements, a network of small cities and towns unified by trade and communal governance. Some researchers have proposed that the scale of construction implies an unprecedented level of social organization, possibly a chiefdom or a loose confederation of communities. Yet the sheer complexity of the earthworks, some plazas spanning more than 200 meters in diameter, connected by roads several kilometers long, raises difficult questions. How did these communities coordinate labor over such expansive distances without centralized authority as we understand it today? Could these networks reflect a cultural sophistication comparable to the better-known civilizations of the Andes, like Tiwanaku or the Inca, yet entirely independent of them? Adding to the mystery are anomalies within the network itself. Some earthworks appear aligned with celestial events, while others form geometric patterns that seem symbolic rather than practical. Circular plazas encircled by ditches resemble cosmological diagrams, suggesting that these structures may have had ritual or ceremonial significance beyond their practical uses. Archaeological evidence also indicates that the canals could have been used for aquaculture, transporting fish and other aquatic resources, a sustainable system that would have supported dense populations in a rainforest environment. Yet questions remain. Were these systems primarily functional, Or did they also carry social or spiritual meaning, reinforcing hierarchies and communal identity? Fringe theories have also emerged, fueled by the scale and sophistication of the network. Some suggest that the Casarabe earthworks point to a lost or forgotten civilization, one whose technological and organizational prowess was extraordinary yet erased from historical memory. Others speculate that the layout may encode astronomical knowledge or cosmological principles, a physical manifestation of an advanced understanding of the world around them. While such theories remain speculative, they emphasize the profound sense of wonder inspired by the discovery, a civilization capable of shaping an entire landscape in ways that continue to defy easy explanation. The environment itself plays a role in the network's mystery. The rainforest has both preserved and concealed the earthworks for centuries, leaving much of the network hidden from ground-level view. Dense vegetation and seasonal flooding have masked the extent of the settlements, meaning that only modern satellite imaging and LiDAR technology have begun to reveal the true scale of human achievement here. What other surprises lie hidden beneath the forest canopy, waiting for patient observation, careful excavation, or a fortunate chance encounter? Could there be structures even larger, or evidence of trade routes linking Casarabe to distant regions of the Amazon or beyond? The Casarabe Urban Earthwork Network reminds us that human ingenuity often flourishes in unexpected places. Where outsiders might see untamed wilderness, its inhabitants once carved order from chaos, creating an urban environment attuned to both nature and society. The sheer scale of planning, labor, and environmental adaptation invites reflection. What drove these communities to invest such effort into shaping the landscape? And what might we learn from their accomplishments about resilience, ingenuity, and collective vision? As the afternoon sun filters through the dense canopy, casting shifting shadows over raised roads and hidden canals, it is easy to imagine the bustling life that once animated these spaces. Children running along pathways now overgrown, merchants transporting goods along the canals, priests performing ceremonies in circular plazas, all echoes of a past preserved in earth and memory. Yet for all that has been revealed, the Casarabe network remains profoundly mysterious. Its creators remain unnamed, its purposes partially understood, and its stories mostly untold. What else might this landscape conceal? And how much of human history has been quietly preserved beneath the forest floor, waiting for rediscovery? The Casarabe Urban Earthwork Network stands as a testament to the ingenuity, adaptability, and ambition of civilizations often overlooked by traditional histories. In its geometric precision, hidden pathways, and interconnected plazas, it offers a silent challenge to modern observers, to imagine the lives of those who built it, to ponder their knowledge of the land and sky, and to accept that some mysteries, no matter how carefully studied, may never be fully explained. And so, beneath the dense Amazon canopy, one can almost hear the whispers of an ancient society, inviting us to wonder, to reflect, and to keep searching for what remains just out of reach. From the dense Amazonian canopy, where the Casarabe urban earthworks silently testify to human ingenuity, our journey now carries us across continents and millennia to China's Shanxi province, to the vast plains surrounding the ancient city of Xi'an. Here lies one of history's most enigmatic and carefully guarded sites, the mausoleum of Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of a unified China. Beneath its imposing mound, a seemingly modest hill rising above the landscape, archaeologists have detected a secret that has captivated scholars and explorers for decades: extraordinarily high levels of mercury in the soil, a phenomenon that may point to a hidden, monumental world preserved beneath the earth. The tomb itself is colossal, an architectural endeavor that speaks of ambition and vision on a scale rarely seen in human history. Historical texts, including those of Sima Qian, describe an underground palace filled with rivers of mercury, miniature landscapes, and celestial representations, a microcosm of the emperor's empire meant to accompany him in the afterlife. Modern surveys confirm the plausibility of these accounts. Soil samples taken from the mound reveal mercury concentrations thousands of times higher than natural background levels, sparking both fascination and concern. What purpose did this serve? Was it purely symbolic, a way of preserving the emperor's domain? Or did it have practical and protective functions, intended to preserve and perhaps even deter intrusion into the inner chambers? Scientific studies of the site show a striking pattern. The highest mercury levels appear at the mound's center and radiate outward in concentric circles, suggesting that the substance was intentionally distributed rather than deposited randomly. Yet despite extensive exploration and high-tech ground-penetrating radar scans, the tomb itself remains largely unexcavated. Officials have cited the toxicity of mercury and the fragility of the structures as reasons for restraint, leaving the interior, its treasures, and its mysteries largely inaccessible. The contrast is striking. An emperor whose life is so meticulously documented, yet whose tomb remains a sealed enigma, a testament to both ambition and mystery. Mainstream interpretations propose that mercury was chosen for its preservative qualities, a material believed to ward off decay and maintain the emperor's body and possessions indefinitely. Ancient Chinese alchemists regarded mercury as a substance of transformation, linking it to immortality, the cosmos, and the divine. It is plausible, then, that the mercury-laden soil reflects not only a sophisticated understanding of materials, but also the deep spiritual beliefs of the Qin dynasty. The emperor's death transformed into a microcosmic empire, eternal, protected, and unreachable. Yet the scale and precision of the application invite further questions. How was so much mercury transported and distributed across the site? Were there hidden channels or underground rivers designed to mimic the waterways of the emperor's realm? Adding to the intrigue are reports of the tomb's interior described in early historical accounts. Ceilings decorated with gold stars, intricate palaces, and rivers flowing with mercury, creating a miniature celestial map. While some of these descriptions may be exaggerated or symbolic, the mercury anomaly in the soil lends them an unexpected plausibility. Could it be that the historical record, often treated with skepticism, is more literal than previously thought? If so, then the tomb beneath this mound is not merely a burial site. It is a crafted visionary world, a landscape of power, cosmology, and ambition frozen in time beneath layers of soil and metal. Fringe theories have flourished alongside scientific inquiry. Some researchers speculate that the mercury rivers may have had chemical or alchemical functions beyond preservation, perhaps even experiments in early proto-science. Others suggest the possibility of hidden chambers filled with artifacts whose designs are unparalleled, or that the tomb may contain knowledge of engineering and metallurgy lost to history. While these ideas remain speculative, they underscore a fundamental truth. The Qin tomb continues to captivate because it exists at the intersection of human ambition, science, and imagination. The surrounding landscape adds further depth to the mystery. Satellite imagery and ground surveys reveal the careful planning of the tomb in relation to natural features, suggesting a sophisticated understanding of geomancy, astronomy, and symbolism. The mound aligns with nearby hills and water sources, reflecting principles of harmony between earth and heaven. It is a reminder that the Qin emperor's vision was not confined to stone and soil, but extended to the broader landscape, integrating natural and human-made elements into a unified, enduring monument. Despite centuries of study, the tomb remains largely untouched, its treasures and secrets preserved beneath layers of earth and toxic metal. The mercury anomaly raises as many questions as it answers. How much of the emperor's empire is literally preserved underground? What else lies concealed beneath the soil? Artifacts, inscriptions, or engineered structures beyond imagination? And most profoundly, what does this reveal about the worldview of a civilization capable of creating a subterranean empire designed to endure for eternity? As the sun sets over the plains of Shanxi, casting long shadows across the earthen mound, the air seems almost to hold its breath. The Qin tomb stands as a silent sentinel, a bridge between the ambitions of the living and the mysteries of the past. In its mercury-laden soil, in the untouched chambers beneath the earth, lies a question that has persisted for over 2 millennia. What did the first emperor of China truly envision for eternity, and how much of it remains hidden, waiting for the patient, the careful, and the curious to uncover? The Qin tomb Mercury soil anomaly reminds us that even the most well-documented civilizations contain secrets that evade exploration. It challenges us to reflect on the scale of human ambition and the lengths to which a society might go to preserve power, belief, and knowledge beyond the reach of time. And it leaves us with a quiet, lingering wonder. Beneath this unassuming mound, in the toxic stillness of centuries-old Mercury, does the past whisper still, and what might it be trying to reveal? From the plains of Shanxi, where mercury-laden soil hints at the extraordinary vision of Qin Shi Huang, our journey now turns southeast, across mountains and rivers, to the fertile lowlands of northeastern Thailand. Here lies Banqiang, one of Southeast Asia's most remarkable and mysterious archaeological sites, a place where the traces of early human innovation, culture, and artistry emerge from the soil with quiet eloquence, yet leave us with questions that have lingered for decades. At first glance, Banqiang appears serene, gently undulating fields, small villages tucked among the rice paddies, and the occasional meandering stream reflecting the soft light of dawn. Yet beneath this tranquil surface lies a settlement that rewrote our understanding of prehistoric life in the region. Excavations reveal a complex community that thrived for more than 2 millennia, with evidence of sophisticated metallurgy, pottery, agriculture, and social organization, dating as far back as 2100 BC. What makes Banqiang extraordinary is not only the antiquity of its artifacts, but the subtlety of its innovations. Quiet genius preserved in clay, bronze, and human remains. Perhaps the most striking evidence of the Banqiang civilization is its pottery. Simple at first glance, the vessels display an elegance of form and function that speaks to a culture attentive to both utility and beauty. Many are decorated with intricate red-painted designs, spirals, and abstract motifs, the patterns revealing a symbolic language whose meaning remains largely unknown. Were these purely aesthetic choices, or did they convey status, belief, or narrative? The careful placement of pottery in burials suggests ritual significance, yet no written record survives to guide our interpretation. Each vessel, each shard, offers a glimpse into a society whose voice reaches across millennia in silence, urging us to ponder the lives of those who shaped it. Banqiang is also notable for its bronze artifacts, which challenge conventional timelines of metallurgical development. Archaeologists have uncovered axes, ornaments, and tools crafted with remarkable precision and sophistication for a society thought to be at an early stage of technological development. Early analyses suggested that these items were contemporaneous with civilizations more commonly associated with bronze technology, raising questions about the independent emergence of metallurgical knowledge. How did the people of Banqiang acquire such skill? Was it through local experimentation, trade networks spanning vast distances, or knowledge lost to history? And what drove them to invest in metallurgy at a scale that seems, at first, disproportionate to their apparent social complexity? The site's burial practices add another layer of mystery. Thousands of graves have been unearthed, revealing a spectrum of age, status, and adornment. Some individuals were interred with simple pottery, while others were accompanied by elaborate bronze ornaments, suggesting a nuanced social hierarchy. Perhaps most intriguing is the evidence of ritual practices connected to death and the afterlife. Bones painted with red ochre, objects placed deliberately to accompany the deceased, and the careful orientation of graves. What beliefs guided these choices? And what do these practices reveal about the relationship between the living and the dead in a society without written records? Recent scientific studies have added further fascination to Banqiang. Isotopic analysis of human remains provides insight into diet, mobility, and health, painting a picture of a population deeply connected to its environment, yet capable of remarkable adaptation. Archaeobotanical studies show advanced rice cultivation and the management of domestic plants, while faunal remains suggest hunting, herding, and domestication practices. It is a portrait of ingenuity and resilience, a society that harmonized with its landscape while pushing the boundaries of technology and culture. Yet, as much as we know, Banqiang retains its mysteries. Some of the bronze artifacts and burial patterns do not align neatly with regional timelines, suggesting possible influences from or contacts with distant cultures. Certain pottery motifs bear uncanny resemblance to symbols found hundreds of kilometers away, hinting at networks of trade, migration, or shared cosmology that remain largely speculative. The absence of contemporary texts leaves these connections tantalizingly out of reach. Were these parallels coincidence, or do they point to a hidden story of interaction across prehistoric Southeast Asia, one that challenges conventional narratives of isolated development? Banqiang's enduring mystery is not confined to objects alone. The very landscape itself holds clues and questions. Excavated areas reveal layers of settlement, abandonment, and reuse, suggesting a society that adapted to environmental shifts, flooding, and perhaps even social upheaval. Yet large portions of the site remain unexplored or obscured by modern development, leaving the possibility that further discoveries could transform our understanding of Banqiang entirely. What other technological innovations, social structures, or symbolic systems might be lying quietly beneath the soil, waiting for patient excavation? Walking through the excavated areas today, it is easy to imagine the rhythm of life that once animated this place. Children running along earthen pathways, artisans shaping clay and bronze, farmers tending rice paddies, and families performing rituals that linked the living with their ancestors. The site, though silent now, speaks in fragments and whispers, reminding us that the past is rarely lost. It persists in patterns, shapes, and traces that await careful observation and contemplation. Banqiang challenges us to reconsider what we know about prehistoric societies. It invites reflection on human creativity, adaptability, and the subtle ways in which communities leave their mark on the world. And as the sun sets over the gentle fields, casting long shadows across the excavated mounds and unturned soil, one is left with a lingering question. What else does Banqiang hide beneath its quiet surface? And how many stories of human ingenuity, resilience, and mystery remain waiting for us to uncover? From the fertile lowlands of Banqiang, where early Southeast Asian communities sculpted clay, bronze, and ritual into enduring testimony, our journey now leads us far north, across seas and latitudes, to the windswept coastlines of Orkney, Scotland, where one of Europe's most evocative prehistoric sites quietly rests, Qaramel. Known for its remarkably preserved stone dwellings, Qaramel sits on the Bay of Scale, a place where the North Sea's relentless winds sculpt the land, and tides whisper across ancient sand and rock. At first glance, the village appears frozen in time, stone walls, hearths, and passageways hinting at daily life from 3200 BC to 2200 BC. But beneath these familiar remains lie layers of mystery, submerged phases that speak of shifting seas, lost structures, and the intimate relationship between people and the environment. Qaramel is remarkable not only for its preservation, but for the story it tells about resilience and adaptation. The stone houses, built with care from locally quarried flagstone, are partially sunken into the earth, a design that protected inhabitants from harsh winds while providing insulation. Narrow passageways connect the homes, and built-in furniture, including beds and storage units, reveals a sophisticated understanding of domestic space. Archaeologists have identified multiple construction phases, some now partially submerged by shifting sands and rising sea levels, indicating that the village evolved over centuries in response to environmental pressures. How did these communities anticipate and respond to changes in their landscape, and what secrets lie in the submerged layers now hidden beneath the shifting shoreline? Historical and environmental studies suggest that much of Qaramel's vulnerability stemmed from gradual coastal erosion and rising sea levels. The settlement was built on low-lying sand dunes, and over centuries the North Sea encroached, threatening the integrity of buildings and eventually prompting abandonment. Yet some evidence hints at more complex interactions with water than simple erosion. Submerged hearths, walls partially buried beneath sediment, and traces of earlier habitation layers suggest repeated adaptation to flooding or shifting sands. Were these structures intentionally modified, or do they reflect cycles of natural inundation? And if water played a constant shaping role in everyday life, how did these early people perceive it? Threat, resource, or sacred presence? The material culture recovered from Qaramel adds further depth to its story. Pottery fragments, stone tools, and personal ornaments suggest a community highly attuned to its environment, making use of both local resources and long-distance contacts. Seashells, beads, and imported stone point to networks of exchange extending across the Northern Isles and perhaps further afield. Yet the submerged phases remain less understood. Portions of the settlement now under sand or tidal influence may contain structures and artifacts that could dramatically shift our understanding of population density, social organization, or cultural practices. Could there have been ceremonial spaces, communal areas, or even more sophisticated constructions hidden beneath layers now inaccessible without careful underwater or geophysical investigation? Adding to the intrigue are the subtle clues in the landscape itself. The layering of sediments, the orientation of houses, and traces of defensive embankments hint at long-term engagement with both land and water. Some archaeologists speculate that the village may have been more extensive than previously thought, with peripheral buildings now completely submerged or destroyed. Others suggest that the inhabitants may have intentionally adapted to a semi-aquatic environment, creating temporary or seasonal structures that vanished with tides and storms, leaving only the enduring stone cores we see today. How much of Qaramel's daily life, economy, or ritual practice is preserved in these hidden submerged phases? Fringe theories have also emerged, inspired by the village's coastal vulnerability and apparent sophistication. Some propose that the submerged layers may hold evidence of catastrophic flooding or climate events that reshaped settlement patterns across northern Europe in the late Neolithic. Others suggest that Qaramel could have functioned as part of a wider, interconnected network of coastal sites, linked not only socially but hydrologically, sharing knowledge of tides, weather, and navigation. While these interpretations remain speculative, they underscore the enduring fascination of a settlement so intimately tied to the forces of nature. Even today, the site evokes a sense of quiet mystery. Walking among the exposed homes, one can almost hear the echoes of domestic life, the crackle of firewood, children moving between rooms, the rhythmic pounding of tools shaping stone and bone. Yet the submerged phases remind us that much of this life remains hidden, out of sight, buried beneath sand, silt, and sea. They challenge our perception of permanence, emphasizing the impermanence of human endeavor and the delicate interplay between people and environment. How did the inhabitants of Qaramel understand their place in a landscape that was both home and potential threat? The village's preservation today owes as much to chance as design. Centuries of sand and shifting winds protected structures from complete decay, yet the same elements continue to erode what remains. Qaramel's submerged layers act as a silent record of adaptation, a testament to human resilience, and a reminder that history is rarely linear. It is layered, complex, and often partially hidden, waiting for patient observation, careful interpretation, and respect for both the natural and human forces that shaped it. As the tides lap gently against the exposed stones and the wind carries the chill of the North Sea across the bay, one is left with a profound question. What stories remain hidden beneath the sands and sediments? What can the submerged phases reveal about the ingenuity, struggles, and daily lives of those who lived here over 5,000 years ago? Qaramel reminds us that mystery is often preserved not only in artifacts but in absence, in what is hidden, partially submerged, or lost, and that the past continues to whisper, inviting the curious to listen, reflect, and wonder. From the windswept shores of Orkney, where Qaramel's stone homes whisper stories of Neolithic adaptation and resilience, our journey now carries us southward across the Mediterranean to the sun-drenched hills of Cyprus, where one of the earliest and most enigmatic settlements of the region quietly endures, Kyrokitia. Nestled on a rocky promontory overlooking the Mesaoria Plain, Kyrokitia is a place where human ingenuity and environmental adaptation intersect, leaving behind circular stone houses, layered streets, and traces of a society whose memory survives only through the stones and artifacts it left behind. At first sight, the settlement appears modest, almost fragile against the landscape, yet a closer look reveals a sophisticated urban organization, carefully planned architecture, and an enduring mystery that continues to intrigue archaeologists and historians alike. The site itself is immediately striking. Kyrokitia's homes are primarily circular, built with limestone blocks and mud mortar, their walls rising in concentric rings. Small doorways, low thresholds, and embedded stone benches hint at carefully considered domestic design. The village is compact, its structures densely clustered, forming a labyrinth of interconnected spaces. Streets and pathways wind between the houses, suggesting a community mindful of both social cohesion and defense. Some dwellings contain evidence of multiple phases of rebuilding, indicating a society that persisted and adapted over centuries, roughly from 7,000 to 4,000 BC. How did such a settlement thrive in a landscape often described as harsh and exposed, vulnerable to seasonal winds, heat, and drought? Archaeological excavations reveal more than just architecture. They uncover a carefully managed society. Pottery, stone tools, and bone implements illustrate daily life, while the remnants of domestic plants and domesticated animals suggest a community deeply connected to its environment. Cereals, pulses, and goats were cultivated and managed, while hunting supplemented the diet. Yet, even as we piece together the practical aspects of life, questions remain. Why did the inhabitants choose circular structures rather than rectangular homes seen in other contemporaneous settlements? Some suggest that the circular design may have held symbolic significance, echoing cosmological beliefs or social hierarchies. Others propose that this form was simply practical, providing stability and thermal efficiency in a climate of hot summers and cold winters. Perhaps it was both, a subtle fusion of utility and belief. Kyrokitia's fortifications add further intrigue. The settlement is encircled by a massive stone wall, punctuated by a small number of entrances, suggesting a concern with defense, control, or ritual demarcation. Was the wall constructed to protect inhabitants from neighboring communities or wild animals? Or did it serve a symbolic purpose, defining sacred space and collective identity? The scale and precision of construction, combined with the effort required to quarry, transport, and assemble the stones, speak to a society capable of coordinated labor, social organization, and long-term planning. What social structures enabled such coordination in a world without writing or apparent centralized authority? The burial practices of Kirakitia further deepen its mystery. Inhabitants were interred beneath the floors of homes, often accompanied by pottery, tools, and ornaments. Some graves include multiple individuals, hinting at complex family or social arrangements, while the placement of bodies and accompanying items suggests ritualized practices surrounding death. Why were the dead incorporated into the very spaces of daily life? Did this practice reflect an ongoing connection between the living and the dead, a tangible link across generations, or was it primarily practical, conserving space within the fortified settlement? Each grave, each artifact, raises questions that modern researchers can observe but not fully answer. Kirakitia also hints at trade, exchange, and interaction beyond the immediate settlement. Some obsidian tools are traced to sources in Anatolia, while shells and other materials point to connections with coastal regions. These items indicate a network of contact, movement, and knowledge transmission extending across the eastern Mediterranean. How extensive were these connections, and how much influence did they have on the settlement's social and technological development? Did the inhabitants of Kirakitia participate in wider cultural or ritual networks whose traces have largely vanished? Despite extensive excavation, Kirakitia retains its enigmas. Some dwellings show evidence of sudden abandonment or rebuilding, suggesting environmental pressures, resource scarcity, or social change. The circular homes, while robust, are vulnerable to erosion, and portions of the settlement have already been lost to time and the elements. Modern technology, including aerial imaging, 3D modeling, and geoarchaeological analysis, offers glimpses into hidden structures and settlement patterns, yet the full picture remains incomplete. What might lie beneath unexcavated areas, and what aspects of daily life, governance, or ritual remain invisible to us? Fringe theories have emerged to account for Kirokitia's sophistication and endurance. Some suggest connections with other early Mediterranean cultures, proposing shared knowledge of agriculture, architecture, and social organization that challenges conventional ideas of isolated development. Others speculate about symbolic or ritual dimensions encoded in the village layout, including potential astronomical alignments or cosmological representation. While these interpretations remain speculative, they underscore the profound sense of wonder inspired by a settlement built nearly 9,000 years ago, whose ingenuity and cohesion continue to resonate across millennia. Walking among the ruins today, it is possible to imagine life in Kirakitia. Children moving between homes, women tending to hearths, men shaping tools, elders performing ritual duties, and the rhythmic cycle of work, community, and celebration all unfolding beneath the bright Mediterranean sun. Yet the settlement's silence is almost as compelling as its artifacts, a quiet invitation to reflect on the ephemeral nature of human endeavor. How did this society perceive time, mortality, and continuity, and what stories might the walls, streets, and graves have silently told if we could only hear them? Kirakitia challenges our understanding of early human settlement, technology, and social organization. It demonstrates that even in the distant past, humans were capable of remarkable ingenuity, organizing labor, shaping environments, managing resources, and embedding meaning into domestic and communal spaces. And yet, for all that has been discovered, much remains unknown. How did Kirokitia's inhabitants navigate the delicate balance between environment and survival? What rituals, beliefs, and knowledge guided their daily decisions, their architecture, and their burial practices? And what, ultimately, can this ancient settlement teach us about the persistence of human curiosity, adaptation, and imagination? As the sun dips behind the hills of Cyprus, casting long shadows over the circular stone houses, one is struck by the quiet majesty of Kyrokitia. It is a place of stone, soil, and memory, where the past remains tangible, yet tantalizingly elusive. Every wall, hearth, and grave hints at a story partially told, a civilization whose voice survives in fragments and whispers. And it leaves us with the enduring question: what more might lie hidden beneath the stones and soil, and what lessons about human ingenuity, resilience, and mystery remain waiting for those patient enough to listen? From the sun-drenched hills of Cyprus, where Kyrokitia's circular stone houses preserve the ingenuity of one of the earliest Mediterranean communities, our journey now carries us northeast into the rugged mountains of Kurdistan, where the Zagros foothills cradle one of the most intriguing Neolithic sites ever discovered, Zawi Kemi Shanidar. Nestled along the banks of a narrow valley, this site offers a rare glimpse into a world over 10,000 years removed from our own, a community whose lifeways, rituals, and structures challenge our understanding of early human society. At first glance, Zawi Kemi Shanidar appears unassuming, a modest collection of low stone walls, shallow pits, and traces of dwellings partially obscured by time and sediment. Yet beneath its quiet surface lies evidence of a society negotiating survival, symbolism, and the nascent stirrings of culture. The site occupies a strategic position in the Zagros Mountains, with steep slopes rising on one side and a meandering stream nourishing the valley below. The terrain is both protective and demanding, providing natural defenses against predators and rivals, but also requiring careful adaptation for agriculture and habitation. Archaeologists have identified multiple habitation layers at Zawi Kemi Shanidar, suggesting that the site was occupied intermittently over thousands of years, beginning around 12,000 BC. Excavations reveal structures built from stone foundations topped with organic materials, creating semi-subterranean dwellings that provided insulation from harsh winters and the scorching sun of summer months. How did these early communities manage such architectural sophistication without written records, and what drove their repeated occupation of this particular valley? Artifacts recovered from Zawi Kemi Shanidar illuminate daily life, yet also deepen the mystery. Stone tools of remarkable precision suggest hunting, food processing, and craft specialization. Fragments of bone and shell indicate a diverse diet supplemented by local flora and fauna, and early evidence of plant cultivation hints at the beginnings of domestication. The sophistication of these tools and the apparent planning and settlement layout suggest a community with both knowledge and foresight. Yet as much as we can reconstruct, questions remain. How were social responsibilities divided? How did this group negotiate leadership, cooperation, and resource allocation in a harsh and variable landscape? The most compelling aspects of Zawi Kemi Shanidar are its ritual and burial practices, which offer a direct, if fragmentary, window into the spiritual lives of its inhabitants. Burials at the site range from simple interments beneath dwelling floors to more elaborate graves, sometimes accompanied by grave goods, animal remains, or ochre pigment. Such practices echo those found at nearby Shanidar Cave, famous for the flower burials that suggest symbolic treatment of the dead, yet Zawi Kemi Shanidar offers its own unique patterns. Some graves are carefully aligned, while others seem irregular, prompting speculation about social stratification, gender roles, or ritualized cosmology. Did these communities possess early notions of the afterlife, or were these practices purely symbolic, reinforcing group identity and cohesion? Environmental and climatic factors add further intrigue. The Zagros region has undergone significant changes over the millennia, with shifting rainfall patterns, temperature fluctuations, and occasional seismic activity. Soil and sediment analyses suggest episodes of flooding and landslides, which may have influenced settlement phases, destroyed structures, or prompted relocation within the valley. How did the inhabitants of Zawi Kemi Shanidar perceive and respond to these environmental pressures? Did they develop early forms of landscape management, or were their lives dictated largely by the forces of nature, leaving only the stones and artifacts as testament to their presence? Artifacts also hint at connections beyond the immediate valley. Obsidian fragments, sourced from distant volcanic outcrops, suggest exchange networks spanning tens or even hundreds of kilometers. Similarly, certain stylistic features of tools and ornamental items parallel those found in other Zagros Neolithic sites, raising questions about cultural transmission, trade, and mobility. How much of Zawi Kemi Shanidar's development was influenced by local innovation, and how much by interaction with neighboring communities? And, crucially, what aspects of their cultural knowledge were preserved, adapted, or lost as environmental and social pressures shaped successive generations? Fringe interpretations have arisen in response to the site's subtle enigmas. Some researchers speculate that early symbolic behavior, including the arrangement of burials and the careful placement of objects, may reflect proto-religious or proto-ritualized social systems, hinting at a capacity for abstract thought far earlier than once assumed. Others propose that Zawi Kemi Shanidar may have functioned as a hub in a wider network of early sedentary communities in the Zagros, a locus where innovation, ritual, and environmental adaptation coalesced. While such interpretations are necessarily speculative, they highlight the profound sense of wonder inspired by a settlement that existed so long ago, yet left traces that speak across 10 millennia. Walking among the low stone foundations today, one can imagine the rhythms of daily life, the careful lighting of hearth fires, children moving between dwellings, women and men shaping tools and textiles, families preparing food, and perhaps small ritual observances that connected them to ancestors and the natural world. Yet the silence is profound, almost sacred, reminding us that the most compelling aspects of Zawi Kemi Shanidar are those we cannot fully know. The site preserves actions, choices, and intentions that resist full reconstruction, leaving space for imagination, interpretation, and reflection. Zawi Kemi Shanidar challenges modern assumptions about early human society. It demonstrates that communities were capable of complex organization, adaptation to environmental extremes, and symbolic or ritual behavior long before the emergence of urbanization or writing. At the same time, the site preserves the profound unknowability of the past, the patterns, practices, and meanings that were once obvious to its inhabitants now remain partially hidden, urging us to approach history with curiosity, humility, and attention. As the late afternoon sun illuminates the valley, casting long shadows over stone foundations and sparse vegetation, it is easy to feel the presence of the people who lived here so long ago. Every stone, hearth, and burial traces a human story, yet one that remains incomplete, tantalizing, and enigmatic. What secrets remain buried beneath layers of sediment and rock? How much of their social, spiritual, or technological knowledge has been lost to time? And what might further study reveal about the ways humans first forged communities in challenging landscapes, adapted to changing climates, and laid the foundations for civilizations yet to come? Zawi Kemi Shanidar, like Hirokitia, Saqqara and Banqiang before it, invites us to listen closely to the echoes of the past. It reminds us that even in the most ancient and seemingly remote sites, human ingenuity, resilience, and imagination are tangible. Yet it also challenges us to accept uncertainty, to recognize that much remains hidden, submerged in time, waiting for careful observation, patient excavation, and thoughtful reflection. The Zagros foothills preserve not just stone and soil, but the quiet whispers of lives lived millennia ago, and they leave us with a simple, profound question. What else remains hidden here, and what might it teach us about the earliest stirrings of human society, culture, and mystery? From the rugged Zagros foothills, where Zawi Kemi Shanidar preserves the traces of some of humanity's earliest complex communities, our journey now moves northwest to the rolling chalk plains of southern England, where one of Europe's most enigmatic prehistoric landscapes quietly awaits: Durrington Walls. Situated just 2 miles from the more famous Stonehenge, this vast Neolithic site stretches across hundreds of acres. Its earthworks, timber circles, and recently revealed lost structures offering tantalizing hints of lives and rituals long vanished. At first glance, Durrington Walls is a gentle expanse of grass and soil, punctuated by subtle rises and depressions that suggest what once may have been monumental human effort. Yet beneath this unassuming landscape lies a story of construction, destruction, and deliberate concealment, a narrative written in the language of earth, timber, and ritual. The site itself is imposing in scale. The main enclosure is one of the largest known henge monuments in Europe, encompassing nearly 500 meters in diameter. Its massive circular banks and ditches, visible from aerial surveys and modern LiDAR scans, reveal a society capable of remarkable organization and coordinated labor. But it is the lost structures, subterranean features, buried timber arrangements, and post holes hidden beneath centuries of sediment that hint at a more intricate story. These structures suggest phases of construction far more complex than previously imagined, including arrangements of timber posts forming circles, avenues, and possibly ceremonial spaces now hidden beneath the surface. How were these spaces used? Were they homes, ritual arenas, or symbolic markers connecting earth and sky? Excavations at Durrington Walls reveal a vibrant community occupying the site around 2500 BC, coinciding with the final stages of Stonehenge's construction. Evidence of large feasting events, animal bones, pottery fragments, and charcoal layers suggests that the henge was not simply a ceremonial monument, but a gathering place for human activity, celebration, and perhaps seasonal ritual. Yet the buried and lost structures raise more questions than they answer. Were these timber arrangements temporary, constructed for specific festivals or ceremonies, and then intentionally buried or dismantled? Or were they permanent markers of social or cosmological order, obscured over millennia by natural and human forces? The timber circles, in particular, offer an evocative mystery. Some post holes align with solstitial or lunar positions, hinting at astronomical knowledge and ritual significance. Others appear irregular, suggesting localized, site-specific decisions by the builders. How did these early communities integrate observation of the heavens into the construction of earthworks and timber monuments? And what social or spiritual systems allowed for coordination over such large areas, involving hundreds or possibly thousands of participants? The scale and precision imply not merely technical knowledge, but a shared vision, a culture that could unify practical labor and symbolic meaning in ways that still resonate today. Material evidence from the site further deepens the intrigue. Everyday objects, pottery, flint tools, and ornaments, exist alongside evidence of large-scale feasting, including hundreds of cattle and pig remains. This juxtaposition of the mundane with the ceremonial hints at a society where daily life, ritual, and monumentality were intimately intertwined. Were the lost structures private spaces, domestic areas, or small ritual enclosures that complemented the larger henge? Or did they serve purposes now invisible to us, perhaps marking the passage of seasons, cycles of life, or social hierarchies? Environmental studies suggest that Durrington Walls was intimately tied to its surrounding landscape. Situated near the River Avon, The site may have been accessed via ceremonial avenues following the water, linking the henge with other sacred or domestic sites. Subsurface surveys have revealed ditches and buried banks indicating a previously unrecognized extent of construction, much of it deliberately obscured or eroded over time. The interaction between humans and landscape is striking. The builders reshaped the land, yet were themselves constrained by it, responding to topography, water sources, and soil conditions. Could some of the lost structures have been deliberately buried to symbolize renewal, death, or transition, echoing broader Neolithic beliefs about life and the afterlife? Fringe theories have arisen in response to the site's enigmatic qualities. Some suggest that Durrington walls functioned as a giant calendar or cosmological instrument, a place where timber circles, avenues, and earthworks encoded knowledge of celestial cycles. Others propose that it served as a meeting place for dispersed Neolithic communities, a space for negotiation, trade, or political alliance, its lost structures acting as temporary stages for gatherings that left little trace beyond post holes and soil anomalies. While such ideas remain speculative, they underscore the sense of wonder inspired by a landscape where human intention, ritual, and labor are writ on an almost unimaginable scale. The notion of lost structures also evokes the human desire to conceal, preserve, and transform space. Buried post holes, hidden terraces, and timber arrangements intentionally dismantled or interred suggest that the builders of Durrington walls engaged in acts of both creation and erasure, leaving traces for some purposes known only to themselves. Were these acts symbolic, perhaps reflecting beliefs about cycles of life, death, and renewal? Or were they practical, driven by changes in social structure, population, or environmental conditions? Whatever the reason, these hidden structures invite modern observers to reflect on the deliberate interplay between permanence and impermanence in Neolithic culture. Walking across the site today, it is easy to imagine the ancient sounds and movements, the rhythmic pounding of tools shaping timber, the voices of hundreds gathered for feasts, ritual chants echoing across the landscape, and the careful positioning of posts and stones by hands long vanished. And yet, the silence is equally profound. The buried and lost structures remain largely invisible, preserved in soil and sediment, offering only tantalizing glimpses into a world that existed thousands of years ago. How much remains hidden beneath the grass and earth? How many buildings, ceremonial areas, or sacred markers lie undiscovered, waiting for patient excavation and careful interpretation? Durrington Walls reminds us that human activity, even when monumental, can be both visible and hidden, tangible, yet ephemeral. Its earthworks and lost structures speak to ingenuity, coordination, and symbolic thought, while the gaps in our knowledge emphasize the limitations of archaeology and the enduring mystery of human experience. The site challenges assumptions about prehistoric communities, demonstrating that large-scale planning, ritual practice, and social organization were possible long before written records, yet leaving crucial questions unresolved. As the sun sinks low over the chalk plains, casting long shadows across banks and ditches, one is struck by the scale, ambition, and subtlety of Durrington Walls. It is a landscape shaped by countless hands, lives, and ideas, where the interplay of earth, timber, and human imagination preserved traces of a vanished culture. And yet, beneath the surface, the lost structures remain hidden, silent witnesses to practices, decisions, and beliefs we can glimpse, but not fully know. What else lies buried beneath the soil, waiting to illuminate the lives, rituals, and cosmology of the people who built this monumental site? Durrington Walls, in its scale and mystery, invites reflection, contemplation, and a quiet sense of awe, a reminder that even when centuries separate us from the past, its traces endure, whispering secrets to those who take the time to listen. From the rolling chalk plains of southern England, where Durrington Walls preserves the traces of monumental earthworks and hidden timber circles, our journey now sweeps southeast to the arid hills of southeastern Turkey, to a site that has redefined our understanding of the Neolithic world, Göbekli Tepe. Rising like a silent citadel from the barren landscape of the Anatolian Plateau, the site is composed of massive T-shaped pillars arranged in circular enclosures, some carved with intricate reliefs of animals, abstract symbols, and mysterious motifs. At first glance, the site appears both deliberate and otherworldly, an oasis of human labor in an otherwise sparse environment. Yet one of the most perplexing aspects of Göbekli Tepe is not what stands above ground, but what lies beneath, or rather, what was deliberately buried. The enigmatic backfill event that sealed its monumental enclosures under tons of sediment, preserving them for millennia. The scale of the backfill is extraordinary. Archaeologists estimate that tens of thousands of cubic meters of soil and rubble were transported by hand to cover the stone circles. This was not accidental or a natural collapse. It appears intentional, meticulously executed over time. The act raises immediate questions. Why would a society devote immense labor to construct monumental sacred spaces, only to bury them deliberately? Was the backfilling ritualistic, a symbolic closure of sacred space, or did it serve practical purposes, perhaps protecting the structures from erosion or conflict? The answers remain elusive, and the deliberate obscuring of human achievement adds a layer of mystery to an already extraordinary site. The construction of Göbekli Tepe itself challenges conventional narratives of human development. The massive pillars, some weighing up to 20 tons, are carved with remarkable precision, depicting foxes, snakes, boars, and abstract symbols whose meanings are still debated. The arrangement of the enclosures, often circular and concentric, suggests an advanced understanding of communal design, spatial organization, and perhaps even social or spiritual hierarchy. Yet the deliberate backfilling of these enclosures raises further questions. Was this a closure of sacred spaces in response to cultural change, environmental stress, or ideological evolution? Or does it hint at a form of ritualized concealment, a way of transitioning from one cosmology to another while preserving memory and silence? Archaeological studies suggest that Göbekli Tepe's backfill may have occurred over centuries, indicating sustained cultural intent rather than a single abrupt act. The soil layers contain fragments of tools, refuse, and remains that may reflect ongoing human activity even as the enclosures were being buried. Could this have been a form of ceremonial closure, where each layer represented generations of participation, acknowledgement, or reverence for the sacred? Or does the act hint at social transformation, as early communities shifted from hunter-gatherer networks to more settled agricultural lifeways, leaving certain ritual practices behind? The site's carvings and motifs deepen the mystery. Many of the animal reliefs are exaggerated, stylized, or repeated across multiple pillars, suggesting symbolic or narrative significance. Some researchers argue these images reflect cosmological or mythological understanding, encoding knowledge about the natural world, spiritual beliefs, or social organization. The deliberate burial of these pillars could then be seen as a profound act of preservation, an attempt to protect sacred knowledge from loss or misuse. But if this is the case, why bury it entirely? Was the knowledge intended to remain hidden, accessible only to future generations? Or was it meant to remain an eternal secret, a ritual act whose meaning is lost to time? Environmental factors may have also influenced the backfill. Göbekli Tepe sits in a landscape that was undergoing climatic change around 9,500 BC, with shifting rainfall patterns, soil degradation, and the beginnings of human cultivation in the surrounding areas. Could the burial of the enclosures reflect practical adaptation, protecting monumental structures from flood, erosion, or other natural forces? Or does the meticulous nature of the work suggest that practicality was secondary to symbolic intent, a deliberate act imbued with cultural or spiritual meaning? Fringe interpretations abound, fueled by the scale and mystery of the backfill. Some theorists speculate that Göbekli Tepe represents a lost or forgotten early civilization, one with knowledge, ritual, and construction techniques far advanced for its time. Others suggest astronomical or calendrical significance, proposing that the buried circles aligned with celestial events and that the backfilling was timed to correspond with cosmological cycles. While such theories remain speculative, they underscore the sense of wonder the site inspires. A constructed landscape, monumental in scale and artistry, then deliberately concealed, as if to whisper secrets to the distant future. The human experience embedded in Göbekli Tepe is palpable. One can imagine the laborers transporting stone, sculpting intricate motifs, and arranging enclosures according to a shared vision, only to return repeatedly over generations to bury their work with soil and sediment. The effort required, both physical and social, suggests a community with organization, ritual practice, and shared belief, operating in a world that lacked written records but was rich in symbolic and spiritual expression. What social structures, knowledge, and belief systems enabled such coordination? And how much of that knowledge was intentionally lost, encoded only in the stones themselves? Walking among the partially excavated enclosures today, the scale of human intention is almost overwhelming. Pillars tower silently, their surfaces etched with stories we can only partially decode, while the backfilled soil surrounding them hints at the depth of cultural memory deliberately concealed. The juxtaposition of monumental construction and deliberate burial evokes a sense of deliberate paradox: creation and concealment, permanence and erasure, memory and oblivion. Göbekli Tepe challenges us to consider the ways in which early humans navigated the tension between the tangible and the symbolic, labor and ritual, life and the afterlife. The backfill event reminds us that history is not always linear, visible, or immediately comprehensible. In burying their monumental enclosures, the builders of Göbekli Tepe created a silent archive of human thought, labor, and belief, preserved beneath layers of soil for millennia. It is an act of foresight, restraint, and reverence, a deliberate choice to hide what they had created, leaving future generations with fragments, impressions, and questions. What motivated this extraordinary decision? What knowledge, belief, or ritual was encoded in the soil, and what remains undiscovered beneath the surface? As the sun sets over the Anatolian plateau, casting long shadows across the excavated enclosures and unexcavated mounds, one is left with a profound sense of awe. Göbekli Tepe is more than stone and soil. It is a testament to human ingenuity, spiritual exploration, and the delicate interplay between construction and concealment. The backfill event preserves not only the physical site but also the mystery itself, inviting reflection on the intentions, beliefs, and decisions of people who lived nearly 12,000 years ago. And it leaves us with a single, enduring question: what else remains hidden beneath the surface? And what secrets of early human society, ritual, and imagination await discovery, patiently preserved beneath the soil of Göbekli Tepe? From the monumental enclosures of Göbekli Tepe, where early humans deliberately buried their sacred circles beneath tons of soil, preserving mystery for millennia, our journey now turns to the tropical landscapes of West Africa, to a place where another enigmatic human expression emerged in clay, the Nok culture of central Nigeria. Hidden among rolling savannas, laterite soils, and scattered granite outcrops, Nok sites reveal terracotta figurines of remarkable detail, beauty, and complexity, crafted over 2.5 millennia ago. At first glance, these artifacts appear simply as expressive art, yet their forms, context, and distribution hint at a culture whose origins, purpose, and meaning remain tantalizingly elusive. The terrain of Nok country is unassuming yet fertile, with small hills rising from broad plains dotted with streams and seasonal ponds. These landscapes supported early farming communities who cultivated millet, sorghum, and other crops, while also raising cattle, goats, and sheep. Amid this rural mosaic, archaeologists have discovered terracotta sculptures, heads, full figures, and fragmented body parts, often depicting humans with elongated features, intricate hairstyles, and expressive gestures. Each figurine suggests careful observation of the human form, yet the purpose behind these creations is a profound mystery. Were they ritual objects, commemorative sculptures, markers of social status, or something else entirely? The earliest Nok terracottas date to around 1000 BC, but evidence suggests that the culture emerged even earlier, perhaps as far back as 1500 BC. The origins of this sophisticated artistic tradition raise questions about cultural transmission and innovation in prehistoric West Africa. The figurines display a high degree of anatomical precision and stylistic consistency, implying not only artistic skill, but also long-standing conventions, techniques, and perhaps symbolic meanings passed through generations. How did these communities develop such a refined artistic vocabulary without written language, and what did these forms communicate about identity, status, or cosmology? The terracottas themselves are remarkable for their diversity. Some portray human heads with serene or contemplative expressions, while others depict dynamic full-bodied figures, sometimes in poses that suggest movement, dance, or ritual action. Animals are also present: cattle, monkeys, and birds, each crafted with a sensitivity to form that elevates them beyond mere representation. Some scholars suggest that the figurines functioned as ritual intermediaries, connecting the human and spiritual worlds, or as memorials to ancestors whose presence remained influential in daily life. Yet the lack of direct textual or contextual evidence leaves these interpretations open-ended, and the precise symbolic vocabulary of the Nok remains frustratingly elusive. Archaeological context provides further layers of intrigue. Many terracottas have been found buried in shallow pits, often alongside domestic debris, while others appear deliberately fragmented, with broken pieces scattered across sites. Was this destruction intentional, part of ritual practice, or simply the result of centuries of environmental processes? Some theorists argue that breaking the figurines may have been a deliberate act of transformation, perhaps returning their spiritual energy to the earth, or ensuring that their symbolic power was activated only once, then released. Others suggest more practical explanations, recycling of clay or inadvertent damage, but the recurring patterns across numerous sites imply cultural intent. The scale and distribution of Nok sites also raise questions about social organization. Terracottas are found across a wide region, implying a network of communities sharing stylistic conventions, production techniques, and perhaps ideological frameworks. Did these communities operate under centralized authority, or were the shared motifs and methods transmitted through informal networks of craft knowledge? How did the Nok people coordinate the production, display, and burial of these figurines, and what does this reveal about their society, beliefs, and priorities? Fringe and speculative theories have emerged in response to the mystery of Nok origins. Some suggest connections with broader trans-Saharan trade networks, arguing that stylistic similarities hint at influences from distant regions, perhaps even North Africa or the Nile Valley. Others speculate that the terracottas reflect early forms of spiritual cosmology, encoding symbolic or astronomical knowledge in human and animal forms. While such ideas remain tentative, They illustrate the enduring fascination of a culture that created objects of remarkable beauty and sophistication, yet left no written record to explain their intentions. Environmental and geological factors have also shaped our understanding, or perhaps our misunderstanding, of Nok terracottas. Laterite soils, seasonal erosion, and shifting landscapes have buried, fragmented, and scattered artifacts, leaving incomplete assemblages for archaeologists to interpret. Could portions of Nok culture remain hidden beneath hills, rivers, or agricultural land, awaiting discovery? Might unexcavated sites reveal new types of figurines, ritual structures, or even traces of settlements that could illuminate social, economic, and religious life? The landscape itself is a silent participant in the story, preserving some evidence while obscuring other elements in sediment, vegetation, and topography. Walking among Nok terracottas today, whether in museums, storage collections, or partially excavated sites, one is struck by the care and intention evident in every line, proportion, and detail. These are not casual artifacts. They are objects that speak across time, demanding attention and reflection. The elongated necks, expressive eyes, and carefully articulated hands suggest observation, imagination, and a cultural imperative to capture and communicate human and spiritual essence. Yet much of the context remains missing. The precise function of the figurines, the social structures that produced them, and the cosmologies that informed their creation are lost to history. Nok culture challenges assumptions about the capabilities of early African societies. It demonstrates that sophisticated artistic expression, symbolic thought, and social coordination existed thousands of years before the written record, in communities often overlooked in conventional histories of early civilization. At the same time, the culture reminds us of the limits of our knowledge, the fragmentary nature of archaeology, and the ways in which human intention, belief, and creativity can persist even when context is partially obscured. What secrets of daily life, social organization, or ritual practice remain hidden beneath the soil of central Nigeria? How much of the Nok worldview, encoded in clay, awaits patient interpretation? As the sun sets over the savannas and hills of central Nigeria, casting long shadows across scattered fragments of terracotta, one is left with a profound sense of connection and mystery. The Nok people labored, observed, imagined, and created, leaving behind tangible evidence of their lives, yet deliberately or inadvertently concealing the full meaning of their creations. Their terracottas endure as a testament to human ingenuity, artistic vision, and cultural continuity, and as a reminder that history often speaks in fragments, whispers, and silences. And so we are left with the enduring question: what else remains hidden in the landscapes of Nok country? What stories lie buried beneath the soil? And what insights into early human society, art, and belief have yet to emerge from this ancient African horizon? From the savannas of central Nigeria, where the Nok terracottas speak silently of artistic ingenuity and cultural mystery, our journey now drifts eastward across oceans and continents to the windswept coastlines of New Zealand, where beneath verdant hills and tidal plains lies an enigmatic construction that has puzzled researchers for decades: the Tiny Aro megastructure. Unlike conventional archaeological sites, Tiny Aro presents itself not in fragments of pottery or monumental stones, but as a sprawling, carefully arranged network of terraces, stone alignments, and embankments, etched into the landscape with precision and scale that immediately suggests human intent, yet challenges conventional explanations. At first glance, the site blends seamlessly with its surrounding topography. Rolling hills slope toward the sea, their surfaces punctuated by subtle linear formations and earthen platforms that are only fully perceptible from elevated vantage points or aerial surveys. These terraces, sometimes extending for hundreds of meters, are accompanied by meandering alignments of stones whose purpose is not immediately clear. Were they foundations for buildings, ceremonial paths, or markers of astronomical events? Or do they reflect a combination of practical and symbolic functions, integrating habitation, ritual, and landscape in a way we are only beginning to comprehend? Excavations at Tiny Aro reveal evidence of deliberate shaping and reinforcement. Soil layers have been compacted, stones carefully positioned, and terraces cut to optimize stability and drainage. Some areas contain post holes or depressions, suggesting the presence of structures long since vanished, while others exhibit patterns consistent with ceremonial or communal spaces. Yet the absence of inscriptions, durable artifacts, or definitive architectural remnants leaves the site frustratingly opaque. How did its builders organize labor and knowledge to create such a coordinated system across a vast and uneven landscape? And what motivated the investment of effort in structures whose function today remains ambiguous? The scale of Tiny Aro is one of its most compelling features. Certain terraces and embankments cover several hectares, forming geometric patterns that, when viewed from above, hint at intentionality far beyond simple agricultural modification. Some researchers suggest that the layout encodes knowledge of the surrounding terrain, waterways, or even celestial phenomena, while others propose more practical explanations. Terraces may have served to control erosion, create microclimates for cultivation, or delineate social or ritual spaces. Yet the integration of multiple terraces, alignments, and platforms suggests an underlying vision or plan, reflecting a community capable of sustained collaboration and abstract spatial reasoning. Archaeological analysis has also revealed subtle signs of habitation and subsistence. Traces of charcoal, stone flakes, and organic residue suggest that some terraces may have been associated with temporary settlements, cultivation, or communal gatherings. The presence of these artifacts indicates not merely passive shaping of the land, but active human engagement over long periods. Could the Tiny Aro megastructure represent a hybrid of utility and ceremony, where daily life, seasonal gatherings, and ritual observance were intertwined within a single landscape? And if so, how did the knowledge of design, construction, and use persist across generations in a pre-literate society? The enigmatic character of Tiny Aro has fueled a range of speculative theories. Some suggest that the site served as a monumental observatory, aligning with solstices, lunar cycles, or other celestial phenomena, similar to the arrangements seen at sites like Stonehenge or Nabta Playa. Others propose ritual or ceremonial functions, imagining gatherings, feasts, or sacred processions that took place across terraces and embankments. More fringe interpretations speculate that the scale and precision of the earthworks reflect forgotten engineering techniques or even contact with external cultural influences, though these ideas remain controversial and largely unsubstantiated. Nevertheless, the combination of geometry, scale, and placement invites a profound sense of wonder, leaving the observer to ponder the interplay of practicality, belief, and artistry in Tiny Aro's creation. Environmental context adds further layers to the puzzle. The site sits within a dynamic coastal ecosystem, subject to seasonal rainfall, erosion, and shifting tides. Some terraces may have been designed to mitigate these environmental pressures, while others could have served symbolic or territorial purposes, marking boundaries, sacred spaces, or community domains. How did the builders perceive their environment, and how did ecological constraints shape construction decisions? Did they develop sophisticated landscape management techniques, or did ceremonial and social imperatives outweigh practical considerations? These questions remain open, emphasizing the interplay between human ingenuity and environmental adaptation. The act of constructing the Tiny Aro megastructure suggests a high degree of social organization. Coordinating the placement of terraces, embankments, and alignments over a large area requires knowledge, leadership, and collaboration, implying a shared vision or belief system capable of motivating sustained effort. Were these spaces controlled by a central authority, or did cooperative consensus guide their creation? How were roles, labor, and resources allocated in the absence of written records? And what cultural or spiritual values inspired such monumental investment in shaping the land? Visiting the site today, the subtlety of the work can make it easy to overlook. From ground level, terraces blend with natural slopes, and stone lines appear incidental until seen from a distance, or with modern survey techniques. Yet this subtlety underscores the sophistication of the builders. They integrated monumental human intent with the natural landscape, producing a harmonious and enduring imprint that has persisted for centuries, even millennia. Walking across terraces, observing alignments, and tracing embankments, one can imagine the rhythm of construction, the coordination of labor, and the ceremonies or daily activities that might have taken place here. Tiny Aro, like other enigmatic sites we have encountered, Göbekli Tepe, Durrington Walls, Nok terracottas, reminds us of the fragility and durability of human endeavor. It demonstrates that monumental expression does not always rely on stone temples or written inscriptions. Sometimes it is embedded in earth, subtle geometry, and landscape itself. And yet, for all the sophistication and scale, the megastructure retains its mystery. We know that humans made it, but we cannot fully reconstruct why, when, or how it functioned. What practices, rituals, or knowledge are hidden beneath the surface? What stories remain untold in the terraces and embankments of Tiny Aro? As the late afternoon light casts long shadows across the terraces, illuminating the careful shaping of earth and stone, one is left with a profound sense of both connection and humility. The Tiny Aro megastructure is a monument not only to human ingenuity, but to the limits of our understanding. An invitation to contemplate the ways humans have shaped their environment, expressed their beliefs, and created enduring cultural landscapes long before written history. And it leaves us with an open-ended question. What else remains hidden in this landscape? What patterns and knowledge have yet to be revealed? And what deeper understanding of early human vision and labor might the Tiny Aro megastructure hold, patiently waiting beneath soil, stone, and time? From the windswept terraces of Tiny Aro, where human hands shaped hills, embankments, and alignments into a coherent landscape of purpose and subtlety, our journey now drifts northward, over seas and islands, to the remote and rugged archipelago of Orkney, Scotland, where one of Europe's oldest and best-preserved stone houses quietly testifies to life over 5 millennia ago, the Nap of Howar. Rising from the edge of the sea on the windswept island of Papa Westray, its low stone walls, carefully mortared with turf, sit almost seamlessly within the landscape, enduring centuries of wind, rain, and salt spray. At first glance, Nap of Howar seems unassuming, a simple structure of rectangular plan with 2 adjacent rooms. But beneath its modest exterior lies a remarkable window into Neolithic life, survival, and ingenuity. The house is built of locally sourced stone, with walls over 1 meter thick, providing insulation against Orkney's harsh maritime climate. Its internal spaces are compact yet functional. A larger living area with a hearth and a smaller, perhaps storage-oriented room, connected by low doorways that force the visitor to stoop upon entry. The floors, carefully packed with layers of stone and earth, suggest repeated use and maintenance, and the remains of stone furniture, benches, partitions, and storage platforms offer clues to how space was organized. These features reflect not merely adaptation to environment, but intentionality, a society with practical skills, architectural understanding, and attention to daily life. Archaeological evidence indicates that Nap of Howard was occupied from approximately 3700 BC to 2800 BC, making it contemporaneous with early developments in other parts of Europe, yet standing apart in its preservation and clarity. Hearths, pottery shards, stone tools, and remnants of domesticated animals speak to subsistence strategies that combined farming, animal husbandry, and foraging. Cereals, such as barley and wheat, were cultivated, while cattle, sheep, and pigs were raised for food and labor. Yet the site also preserves evidence of seafaring and coastal adaptation, including fishing implements and shellfish remains, suggesting a community highly attuned to the rhythms of both land and sea. How did these early farmers navigate environmental challenges, social organization, and seasonal change while maintaining such enduring habitations? What makes Nap of Howard particularly fascinating is not just its age or preservation, but the impression of continuity and stability it conveys. Unlike larger ceremonial complexes, it is clearly domestic, a home. Yet even here, in this everyday architecture, mystery persists. Why was the house eventually abandoned? Some suggest environmental change, soil exhaustion, or shifts in social organization as possible reasons. Others speculate about ritual closure, given patterns seen at other Neolithic sites, where structures are intentionally deconstructed or left in a controlled state of decay. Did the inhabitants leave abruptly or gradually, and what traces of daily life, social structure, and belief remain hidden beneath the stone floors? The location of Nap of Howard adds to its intrigue. Situated on the northern tip of Papa Westray, it offers strategic proximity to fertile land and the sea, yet is exposed to the full force of Atlantic weather. How did the builders perceive and adapt to such extremes? Were the house's thick walls, low roofline, and compact interior responses purely practical, or did they also reflect a cultural understanding of domestic space, security, and human comfort? And beyond these walls, what networks connected Papa Westray's inhabitants to neighboring islands and mainland communities? The artifacts suggest exchange of materials and ideas, but the social and economic mechanisms remain largely speculative. Material culture from Nap of Howard deepens the mystery. Pottery shards indicate not only utility, but also aesthetic choices, with patterns, shapes, and finishes hinting at taste and symbolic awareness. Stone tools, from grinding implements to finely crafted blades, reveal technical skill and specialized knowledge, while bone and antler artifacts suggest craft, ornamentation, and daily utility. These objects, simple at first glance, speak volumes about human creativity, planning, and cultural expression. Yet their meanings, why certain forms were preferred, how they were used in ritual or daily life, remain partly obscured by time. Fringe theories and speculative interpretations have emerged, inspired by the house's age, location, and apparent simplicity. Some researchers suggest that Nap of Howard may have been part of a broader pattern of coastal Neolithic settlement, emphasizing ritualized domesticity, where the act of living in certain spaces had social, spiritual, or cosmological significance. Others propose connections to maritime trade and mobility networks, imagining these isolated homes as nodes in a web of cultural exchange across the North Sea and beyond. While evidence is limited, such ideas underscore the site's capacity to stimulate reflection and wonder, reminding us that even modest structures can contain layers of significance beyond immediate survival. Environmental and landscape studies add another dimension to our understanding. Rising seas, shifting coastlines, and storm-driven erosion have altered the original context of the house, obscuring pathways, outbuildings, and nearby habitations. What once may have been a more extensive settlement network is now partially lost to wind, wave, and sediment. Could undiscovered structures lie beneath surrounding soils or peat, holding further clues to the daily life, social networks, or ritual practice of Nap of Hauer's inhabitants? And what might future excavation or analysis reveal about the interplay between architecture, environment, and human adaptation in this remote northern landscape? Walking through the surviving interior today, one is struck by the tangible presence of the people who lived there. The low doorway forces a bowing posture, connecting modern visitors physically to the movements of the past. Hearths suggest warmth, gathering, and sustenance. Storage platforms imply foresight, resource management, and domestic care. Yet the silence is profound, reminding us that the lives lived within these walls were intimate, practical, and deeply human, yet largely invisible to us beyond the fragments they left behind. Nap of Hauer, like other sites we have encountered, Tiny Aro, Nok, Göbekli Tepe, invites reflection on the intersection of human ingenuity, environment, and culture. It demonstrates that domestic life, while often overshadowed by monumental architecture or elaborate ritual, contains layers of knowledge, skill, and symbolism essential to understanding early human societies, and it highlights the limits of our perception. While stone walls endure, the rhythms, conversations, and decisions of those who lived within them remain largely hidden. As the northern light of Orkney fades into a windswept twilight, casting long shadows over the low stone walls, one is left with both connection and mystery. The Nap of Hauer endures, a quiet testament to human adaptation, resilience, and attention to daily life, yet it also preserves unanswered questions. What additional structures or traces remain buried nearby? How did this small domestic site relate to broader social, economic, or ritual networks across Orkney and the North Atlantic? And what more can we learn about human ingenuity, perception, and cultural expression from this unassuming stone house that has survived the passage of over 5,000 years? The answers remain elusive, preserved in stone, soil, and silence, inviting us to continue listening carefully to the whispers of the past. From the remote stone dwellings of Orkney, where the Nap of Hauer quietly preserves the rhythms of Neolithic domestic life, our exploration now moves southeast to the fertile foothills of southeastern Anatolia, where one of the earliest known settlements of the Neolithic period continues to captivate archaeologists and historians alike. Kurtik Tepe. Perched on a gentle rise overlooking the Batman River Valley in modern-day Turkey, the site seems modest in scale, its small mound betraying little of the richness buried within. Yet, beneath the soil, Kurtik Tepe holds traces of a society at the dawn of agriculture, ritual practice, and communal architecture, its artifacts and features revealing both the ordinary and the extraordinary facets of early human life. The landscape surrounding Kurtik Tepe is a mosaic of river terraces, alluvial soils, and low hills, offering fertile ground for early farmers while also providing strategic vantage points over the surrounding valleys. Excavations reveal a layered settlement, with traces of circular and oval mud brick structures, hearths, and storage pits, carefully aligned along the contours of the mound. The architecture suggests not only functional planning, but also attention to social organization, spaces for domestic life, communal gatherings, and perhaps ritual activity. How did these early communities negotiate their daily needs while also creating spaces imbued with symbolic or social significance? Kurtik Tepe is particularly remarkable for the artifacts it preserves, especially its figurative stone and bone carvings. Many depict animals, human forms, and abstract motifs, some rendered with exquisite attention to detail. Of particular interest are small human figurines, often emphasizing certain features, hands, eyes, or torsos, in ways that suggest symbolic, ritual, or cultural significance. Were these objects amulets, votive offerings, or pedagogical tools used to convey social norms or cosmological knowledge? Or did they serve purposes now entirely obscured by time, embedded in belief systems we can only glimpse through fragmented traces? The settlement also provides early evidence of domestication and plant cultivation. Seeds of einkorn wheat, barley, and legumes, alongside remains of sheep and goat, indicate that Kurtik Tepe's inhabitants were part of the transition from foraging to farming. Yet, alongside these signs of subsistence, the site contains evidence of elaborate ritual practice. Burials, some with grave goods, are interspersed among domestic areas, while carefully placed stones and small enclosures hint at deliberate spatial organization beyond immediate utility. How did these early farmers integrate the sacred and the mundane, the practical and the symbolic, in ways that allowed both to coexist within the same landscape? One of the most intriguing aspects of Kurtik Tepe is the apparent continuity of artistic expression. The figurines and carvings show stylistic links to other sites in southeastern Anatolia, suggesting networks of cultural transmission, shared beliefs, and artistic conventions that predate writing. The human forms, with their emphasis on certain anatomical features, hint at a conceptual worldview that may have encompassed fertility, social status, or cosmology. Yet without textual evidence, the meaning of these artifacts remains tantalizingly ambiguous. What stories did these early people tell through their carvings, and how did those stories shape their social and spiritual lives? The stratigraphy of the site adds further layers of mystery. Multiple occupation layers, interspersed with ash deposits, refuse pits, and occasional burial deposits, suggest sustained habitation over several centuries. Some layers hint at ritualized destruction or closure of certain structures, a practice seen at other Neolithic sites. Were buildings deliberately dismantled as part of cultural rites, marking transitions of seasons, generations, or social structures? Or do these patterns reflect practical adaptations to environmental change, population shifts, or resource pressures? The interplay between intentionality and circumstance remains difficult to disentangle, yet it is central to understanding the life and complexity of Kurtik Tepe. Environmental context offers additional insight and raises further questions. The settlement sits near a river, providing water, fertile soils, and access to trade or communication routes. Seasonal flooding may have shaped the placement of structures and pathways, while the surrounding hills provided protection and vantage. Did the inhabitants observe natural cycles for ritual purposes, aligning activities with seasonal or celestial phenomena? Could some of the figurines and carvings reflect knowledge of these cycles, encoding practical or symbolic information that guided everyday life and ceremonial practice? Fringe and speculative interpretations have emerged, inspired by the artistry and sophistication of the site. Some suggest that the figurines, along with small enclosures, may reflect early forms of proto-temples or shrines, predating monumental religious architecture. Others propose that the spatial organization of structures and burials encodes symbolic cosmology, connecting humans, animals, and the surrounding landscape in ways that modern observers can only partially reconstruct. While such theories remain open-ended, they underscore the deep sense of human ingenuity and intent, visible even in modest-sized Neolithic settlements. Walking through the partially excavated areas today, one can almost imagine the rhythm of life at Kurtik Tepe. Hearths crackling with fire, small groups preparing food, children playing amidst the mud brick walls, and adults carefully shaping stone or bone objects, all set against the backdrop of a fertile valley and rolling hills. Yet alongside these everyday scenes is the subtle presence of ritual, expressed in burials, figurines, and the deliberate arrangement of structures. The site invites reflection on how early humans navigated the complex interweaving of survival, social cohesion, and belief, and how the echoes of their choices persist in the soil and stone beneath our feet. Kurtik Tepe, like other sites we have explored, Nap of Howar, Tiny Aro, and Nok, demonstrates that human ingenuity and symbolic expression are not confined to monumental architecture or well-documented civilizations. Even small, early settlements can reveal sophisticated understanding of space, society, and ritual, leaving traces that challenge modern assumptions about the capabilities of prehistoric communities. The presence of figurines, artistic conventions, and carefully constructed habitations highlights a culture deeply aware of both its environment and its own symbolic world. As the light fades over the Batman River Valley, casting long shadows across the low mound and its surrounding terraces, the silence of Kurtik Tepe conveys both endurance and mystery. Stone, soil, and bone bear witness to generations of human experience, daily toil, artistic creation, and ritual observance. Yet many questions remain unanswered. How did the inhabitants conceive of their world? What social, spiritual, and practical knowledge guided their lives? And what else lies hidden beneath the soil, waiting to reveal new insights into one of the earliest chapters of human settlement and cultural expression? Kurtik Tepe preserves these questions in its earth and artifacts, offering not answers, but an invitation to contemplate the ingenuity, belief, and resilience of humans on the threshold of history, and to continue listening to the whispers of a world long past. From the fertile foothills of southeastern Anatolia, where Kurtik Tepe reveals the rhythms of early Neolithic life, our journey now moves southwest to the ancient landscapes of Palestine, to a site often considered one of the earliest urban centers in human history. Tel Es Sultan, more commonly associated with the legendary city of Jericho. Amidst a landscape of arid plains, irrigated fields, and ancient terraces, the Tel rises like a small, layered mound, deceptively modest in scale but staggering in historical significance. It is here that one structure in particular captures attention, a massive stone tower, its origins reaching deep into the 10th millennium BC, standing as a testament to human ingenuity, social coordination, and mystery. The Tel Es Sultan Tower, rising some 8 meters above the surrounding settlement layers, is constructed of unworked stones carefully stacked and compacted, forming a circular bastion with remarkable stability. Its walls, originally sloped and reinforced with earth, suggest both defensive and ceremonial purposes. Early excavators marveled at its scale, noting that moving such massive stones without metal tools or draft animals would have required the labor of an entire community over months, perhaps years. But why did a settlement of early hunter-gatherers, just beginning to experiment with cultivation, invest so much effort in constructing a tower? Was it purely defensive, intended to ward off human rivals or predatory animals? Or did it serve a symbolic or communal purpose, representing social cohesion, cosmological beliefs, or ritual authority? Excavations reveal that the tower was not an isolated feature. Surrounding it are concentric walls, possibly forming defensive embankments, as well as remnants of domestic spaces, hearths, and storage pits. These elements suggest a settlement organized around the tower, perhaps using it as a focal point for both practical and symbolic activity. Its placement at the edge of the Tel, overlooking cultivated plains and seasonal watercourses, would have offered strategic advantages, but also framed the community's spatial and social identity. Did inhabitants see the tower as a protector, a communal marker, or even as a sacred axis connecting earth and sky? Archaeological dating indicates that the tower and its associated walls belong to the pre-pottery Neolithic. A period, roughly 10,000 to 9,500 BC, making it among the earliest known monumental stone structures in the world. At a time when most human groups were still largely mobile, living in temporary shelters, the construction of such a tower reflects an extraordinary degree of planning, organization, and social cooperation. It also suggests knowledge of structural principles, weight distribution, and construction techniques, skills that were likely transmitted orally from generation to generation in the absence of writing. What cultural imperatives, survival pressures, or symbolic needs could have motivated such early architectural sophistication? The tower itself is enigmatic in ways that defy simple interpretation. Its circular plan, thick walls, and elevated position suggest defensive intent, yet there are no signs of weaponry, fortifications, or attack traces in the immediate archaeological record. Could it have functioned as a lookout, a granary, or a communal meeting place? Or did it serve a purpose now lost to time, tied to ritual observation, celestial alignments, or cosmological symbolism? Some researchers have noted the alignment of certain architectural features with seasonal sunrise and sunset points, suggesting an early interest in marking time or celestial events. Could the tower have functioned as a primitive calendar, guiding agricultural, social, or ritual cycles? Material culture from the surrounding settlement provides further insight and raises additional questions. Flint tools, grinding stones, and plant remains indicate a community on the threshold of agriculture, experimenting with domestication of wheat, barley, and legumes, alongside continued hunting and gathering. Animal remains reveal early management of goats and sheep, suggesting that domestication was already reshaping human subsistence. Yet, alongside this practical evidence lie traces of symbolic or ritual activity, carefully buried human skeletons, painted skulls, and unusual deposition of stones, hinting that social and spiritual life was intertwined with survival and labor. How did the tower and its surrounding structures embody or mediate these dual dimensions of existence? Speculative interpretations have emerged over the decades, fueled by the tower's early date and monumental character. Some suggest that it was a center of communal ritual, a place where groups gathered to reinforce social bonds or engage in ceremonies marking seasonal or life cycle events. Others posit that it symbolized emerging social hierarchy, projecting authority or cohesion over a growing sedentary population. Fringe theories even suggest astronomical functions, with the tower acting as a marker for solstices, equinoxes, or lunar cycles. While such hypotheses remain debated, they reflect the enduring sense of awe inspired by a structure that predates most known monumental architecture. The environmental context of Tel es Sultan adds another layer of mystery. The settlement sits near springs and seasonal watercourses, providing fertile soils but also exposing it to flooding and environmental change. Did the tower serve to monitor water levels, protect stored harvests, or signify control over crucial resources? Or was its primary significance symbolic, asserting human mastery and presence within a landscape that was simultaneously nurturing and precarious? The answers remain uncertain, yet the interplay of environmental, social, and symbolic factors is central to understanding the decisions of early builders. Walking across the Tel today, the tower commands attention not through height alone, but through its presence in the layered mound. Layers of occupation beneath and around it speak of centuries of human endeavor: construction, habitation, ritual, abandonment, and reconstruction. The tower has endured floods, erosion, and millennia of human activity, a silent witness to the emergence of urban society and monumental architecture. Standing beside it, one can imagine the laborers hauling stones, the communal gatherings, the careful observation of sun and seasons, and the stories shared around hearths, experiences that link us intimately to the dawn of settled life. Tel es Sultan Tower, like Kurtik Tepe, Nap of Hawar, and Tiny Aro, reminds us that monumental human expression need not rely on temples, palaces or inscriptions. Even in small, early settlements, the need to organize, symbolize, and project collective identity produced structures of lasting significance. The tower preserves the ingenuity, labor, and vision of a society at the threshold of history, while also preserving profound mystery. We can measure its stones, map its walls, and analyze its soil, but the intentions, beliefs, and perceptions that drove its construction remain largely invisible. As the evening light softens over the fertile plains of Palestine, casting long shadows across the Tell and its monumental tower, one is left with a sense of both connection and awe. The Tell es-Sultan Tower endures not just as stone and soil, but as a testament to human creativity, social coordination, and early experimentation with permanence. And yet it leaves us with lingering questions. What rituals, observations, or social practices were centered here? How did its presence shape community life and perception? And what else might remain hidden, buried beneath layers of settlement and time, waiting to reveal new dimensions of one of humanity's earliest monumental achievements? The tower stands silently, inviting reflection and contemplation, and reminding us that some mysteries persist, patiently preserved in the earth itself. From the ancient plains of Palestine, where the Tell es-Sultan Tower stands as a silent witness to early monumental architecture and human ingenuity, our journey now sweeps across oceans and continents to the lush coastal lowlands of Ecuador, where one of the America's earliest known sedentary cultures quietly reveals its ingenuity, the Valdivia culture. Centered along the Pacific coast, near present-day cities like Valdivia and Santa Elena, this culture thrived from approximately 3,500 BC to 1,500 BC, leaving behind an enduring legacy of pottery, settlement patterns, and subtle architectural forms that continue to intrigue archaeologists and historians alike. The Valdivia sites are often low mounds of clay, sand, and shell midden, their surfaces punctuated by remnants of longhouses, storage pits, and hearths. At first glance, the settlements may appear modest, yet careful excavation reveals deliberate planning. Houses arranged in semicircular clusters, pathways interlinking domestic areas, and communal spaces suggest that early Valdivians were attentive not only to survival, but also to social cohesion. How did these coastal peoples negotiate the demands of daily life, fishing, farming, and foraging, while also establishing a structured settlement capable of enduring for centuries? One of the most compelling features of the Valdivia culture is its ceramic artistry, especially the distinctive figurines that have become emblematic of the culture. Crafted from clay and often depicting human forms, these figurines vary from small, portable objects to larger, intricate sculptures. Many emphasize female forms, sometimes accentuating fertility or reproductive symbolism, which has led researchers to consider them in the context of ritual, social identity, or ancestral veneration. Yet their exact meaning remains elusive. Were these figurines purely symbolic, serving as talismans or ritual objects? Or did they have practical or educational purposes, conveying cultural knowledge, social norms, or spiritual belief in ways we can no longer fully decode? Pottery itself reflects extraordinary sophistication. Early Valdivia ceramics are characterized by red slips, polished surfaces, and incised or modeled decorations, showing technical mastery and aesthetic sensibility. Some vessels bear geometric patterns, while others depict stylized animals or human motifs. The craftsmanship implies both specialized knowledge and a cultural emphasis on symbolic expression. Could these objects have functioned as markers of status, identity, or ritual practice? And what might the evolution of pottery styles over centuries tell us about the transmission of knowledge, trade, or interaction between communities? subsistence patterns further illuminate the culture's ingenuity and adaptation. The Valdivians combined early agriculture with fishing and foraging, cultivating maize, beans, and squash, while exploiting coastal and estuarine resources such as fish, mollusks, and crustaceans. Stone tools, grinding implements, and shell tools reveal technological innovation, while midden deposits provide evidence of diet and seasonal activity. How did these early coastal societies balance the challenges of environmental variability, resource management, and population growth? Did the abundance of the Pacific coast encourage complex social organization? Or were ritual and symbolic considerations just as crucial as practical ones? Settlement patterns suggest both stability and adaptation. Houses were often constructed with clay walls and thatched roofs, providing insulation and protection against the humid tropical environment. Semi-subterranean floors helped regulate temperature, while hearths and storage pits demonstrate awareness of domestic needs. Some larger settlements contain clusters of ceremonial or communal spaces, hinting at social stratification, ritual activity, or collective labor. Yet much remains unclear. Were settlements tightly knit communities of kin, extended networks of related households, or centers attracting seasonal populations? The absence of written records leaves such questions tantalizingly open. The coastal environment itself adds layers to the mystery. The Pacific shorelines, estuaries, and mangrove areas provided rich resources but also demanded careful planning and adaptation. Seasonal flooding, storms, and shifting shorelines required flexibility in settlement placement and construction techniques. Did Valdivians perceive these environmental forces as practical challenges, spiritual entities, or both? Could some of the artistic or symbolic practices reflect attempts to negotiate human life with the rhythms of tides, winds, and celestial cycles? One particularly intriguing aspect of Valdivia is the possible connection between ritual and subsistence. The prominence of female figurines has prompted some researchers to hypothesize links between fertility, agricultural cycles, and social ritual. Were these objects central to communal ceremonies, guiding planting or harvest? Did they encode cultural narratives about human life, environment, or cosmology? Other figurines depict abstract or hybrid forms, suggesting that symbolic thinking extended beyond the practical realm into myth, identity, and imagination. Speculative theories also abound. Some propose that Valdivia pottery and figurines reflect cross-cultural influence from other early South American traditions, hinting at long-distance exchange networks. Others suggest that ceremonial spaces within settlements functioned as proto-temples or centers of governance, where social cohesion was reinforced through ritualized practice. While definitive evidence remains limited, such ideas emphasize the complexity and depth of Valdivia culture, a society capable of balancing survival, creativity, and symbolic expression in ways that continue to inspire curiosity. Walking through a reconstructed Valdivia settlement today, one can almost imagine the rhythm of daily life. Families tending gardens, fishermen returning from coastal waters, artisans shaping clay, and communities gathering in semicircular plazas for collective work or ceremonial practice. The culture demonstrates an integrated approach to life, where domestic, subsistence, and ritual spheres were not isolated, but deeply intertwined. And yet, despite this vivid reconstruction, much remains unknown. The stories, beliefs, and social dynamics of Valdivia people remain partially obscured, preserved only in fragments of pottery, shell, and soil. Valdivia, like Tel es Sultan, Kurtik Tepe, and Nap of Hawar, reminds us that the earliest human societies combined practicality with creativity, survival with symbolism. Monumental architecture is not always necessary to leave a lasting legacy. Sometimes, enduring traces of thought, skill, and culture persist in ceramics, settlement patterns, and subtle modifications to the landscape. The Valdivia culture illustrates the delicate balance between daily necessity and human imagination, showing that even small, early communities were capable of sophisticated expression, both practical and symbolic. As the warm Pacific light fades over the coastal lowlands, illuminating the clay mounds and scattered shell middens, one is left with a sense of continuity and mystery. The Valdivia culture endures, not only through its material artifacts, but also through the questions it leaves unanswered. How did these early coastal peoples conceptualize their world, balance human needs with environmental rhythms, and express identity and belief through art and architecture? What other traces remain buried beneath sediment, waiting to reveal the untold dimensions of this ancient society? Valdivia preserves these questions in clay, soil, and shell, inviting us to contemplate the ingenuity, resilience, and symbolic life of one of South America's earliest cultures. From the coastal lowlands of Ecuador, where the Valdivia culture left delicate traces of art, settlement, and ritual, our journey now moves across oceans to the northernmost island chains of Japan, to a region where dense forests and fertile plains once nurtured one of the largest and most remarkable settlements of the Jomon period, Sanai Maruyama. Nestled in the plains of Aomori Prefecture, the site stretches over several hectares, its gently undulating terrain hiding layers of human occupation that date as far back as 3,900 BC. Today, the remains are silent, yet the scale and complexity of the settlement suggest a vibrant community deeply engaged with its environment, culture, and ritual life. Excavations reveal the outlines of longhouses, pit dwellings, raised floor structures, and carefully arranged hearths, some of which were remarkably large, indicating communal gathering or specialized activity. Unlike the modest homes of earlier periods, these structures suggest deliberate architectural planning, reflecting both practical adaptation to climate, insulation against harsh northern winters, and social organization. How did the inhabitants balance the daily demands of subsistence, craft, and social cohesion within such expansive, carefully organized spaces? The material culture of Sanai Maruyama offers profound insight into daily life, belief, and expression. Pottery, with its intricate cord-marked patterns, remains among the finest of the Jomon era. These vessels, often large and elaborately decorated, may have served domestic, ceremonial, or symbolic purposes. Stone tools, polished axes, and fishing implements indicate an economy that combined foraging, hunting, and early cultivation. But perhaps most striking are the figurines, clay representations of humans, animals, and abstract forms, whose stylized features and emphasis on certain attributes hint at symbolic, ritual, or cosmological significance. Did these objects serve as protective talismans, educational tools, or ritual instruments? Or did they convey stories and beliefs that structured social life in ways now invisible to us? Sanai Maruyama's settlement layout further deepens the mystery. Pit dwellings were often clustered in ways suggesting kinship or functional organization, while raised floor buildings may have been used for storage, craft production, or communal activity. Large post holes indicate the presence of monumental wooden structures, the purpose of which remains debated. Were these early forms of public architecture, ceremonial spaces, or markers of social identity? And how did they relate to the surrounding landscape, rivers, and forests? The careful placement of structures implies awareness not only of immediate needs, but also of social, symbolic, or environmental considerations. Evidence of ritual practice is subtle but compelling. Burial pits, occasional placement of offerings, and deliberate arrangement of stones suggest that the Sanai Maruyama inhabitants engaged in ceremonial behavior integrated with everyday life. Some clay figurines are found in contexts that hint at ritual deposition rather than casual discard. Others are positioned near hearths or communal spaces, suggesting that symbolic practice was interwoven with domestic routines. How did these practices structure community cohesion, identity, and worldview? Did they mark seasonal cycles, life milestones, or cosmological events? The absence of written records leaves these questions tantalizingly open. Environmental adaptation at Sanai Maruyama was sophisticated. The settlement sits within a temperate, forested region with access to rivers, lakes, and coastal resources. Archaeological evidence shows reliance on fishing, hunting, gathering nuts, and possibly rudimentary forms of cultivation. Seasonal migration patterns for resource acquisition may have informed both the placement and construction of dwellings. How did these early Jomon people manage environmental unpredictability, from harsh winters to flood-prone river valleys? And did they integrate such environmental awareness into symbolic or ritual practices, encoded in the arrangement of structures, figurines, or pottery decoration? Speculative interpretations of Sanai Maruyama emphasize the interplay between domestic life and social complexity. The scale of certain buildings and post-hole structures suggests that communal organization extended beyond nuclear families, perhaps involving coordinated labor for construction, food storage, or ritual observance. Some scholars propose that large wooden posts may have supported ceremonial platforms, observation points, or even proto-temples, while others consider the possibility of astronomical or seasonal alignments. Did the settlement represent an early attempt to combine social, ritual, and environmental intelligence into a cohesive community framework? The evidence remains fragmentary, yet the very ambition of the settlement hints at sophisticated collective thinking. The artistic expression of the Sanai Maruyama people also raises questions. Clay figurines emphasize hands, eyes, torsos, or stylized features that may reflect fertility, protection, or ancestral veneration. Cord-marked pottery demonstrates a sense of aesthetic intentionality, with patterns that may have communicated identity, clan affiliation, or cosmological symbolism. The recurrence of certain motifs across multiple sites suggests shared cultural knowledge or networks of exchange. What social or spiritual narratives were encoded in these objects? And what might they reveal about the human capacity for abstraction, imagination, and symbolic communication 5 millennia ago? Walking through the reconstructed spaces today, one can imagine the rhythm of life: families tending hearths, children playing in open courtyards, artisans shaping clay, and gatherings around larger communal buildings. The settlement demonstrates an extraordinary awareness of space, material culture, and social cohesion, combining the mundane with the symbolic in ways that still resonate. Yet, despite the clarity of the archaeological record, the intentions, beliefs, and perceptions of its inhabitants remain partially hidden, preserved only in impressions on clay, post holes in the earth, and the arrangement of stones. Sanai Maruyama, like Valdivia, Tel es Sultan, and Kurtik Tepe, illustrates that early human societies were capable of complex organization, symbolic expression, and environmental adaptation without reliance on writing, monumental architecture, or metal tools. Even in a remote northern climate, human ingenuity manifested in settlement planning, pottery, figurines, and ritualized practices, leaving traces that continue to fascinate and inspire. The site underscores that human creativity, social intelligence, and symbolic thinking are as old as civilization itself, often hidden beneath layers of soil and centuries of silence. As the northern sun sets over the Aomori Plains, casting long shadows across post holes, hearths, and clay floors, one is left with a sense of continuity and wonder. The people of Sanai Maruyama engineered not just survival, but a life infused with craft, symbolism, and social coordination. And yet, as with so many of the world's early settlements, profound questions remain. What social structures governed daily life? How were rituals, domestic labor, and communal gatherings coordinated? And what stories, beliefs, or knowledge are still buried beneath the soil, waiting to reveal more about the ingenuity of these Jomon inhabitants. Sanai Maruyama preserves these mysteries in its earth and artifacts, inviting us to reflect on human resilience, creativity, and the subtle traces left by life lived millennia ago. From the northern plains of Japan, where Sanai Maruyama preserves the subtle traces of Jomon ingenuity and ritualized daily life, our journey now drifts westward across continents and centuries, arriving in the rugged landscapes of northeastern Portugal, where the Coa Valley unfolds along the winding course of its river. Here, the valley's rocky escarpments and cliff faces shelter one of the most extraordinary repositories of Paleolithic art in the world. Open-air engravings that have survived for more than 20,000 years, carved into schist and granite by hands long vanished. Unlike the cave art of Lascaux or Altamira, these images confront the daylight, etched onto exposed rock and overlooking a landscape of steep valleys, olive groves, and meandering streams, challenging us to imagine the intentions of the artists who left them behind. The Coa Valley sites, discovered relatively recently in the 1990s during surveys for a proposed dam, span dozens of locales along the river and its tributaries. The engravings depict a variety of subjects: wild horses, aurochs, deer, and ibex, human figures and abstract geometric signs, combinations of forms that suggest movement, ritual, and symbolic thought. The sheer number, scale, and intricacy of these carvings imply not casual decoration, but deliberate and sustained activity, perhaps over generations. Why did Paleolithic people choose these exposed rock faces, risking weathering and erosion rather than hidden caves? What significance did the valley itself hold that made it a canvas for human expression over millennia? Dating these sites is challenging. Scholars rely on stylistic comparison, sediment analysis, and occasional radiocarbon dating of associated organic deposits, placing most of the engravings between roughly 22,000 and 10,000 BC. This period encompasses the late Upper Paleolithic, a time of profound adaptation, migration, and cultural innovation in Europe. Nomadic hunter-gatherers traversed vast landscapes, responding to glacial advances and retreats, while developing increasingly sophisticated tools, social structures, and symbolic expression. In this context, the Coa Valley engravings represent more than art. They are evidence of the cognitive and cultural complexity of early humans, a window into perception, belief, and social organization tens of millennia ago. The technique of the engravings is precise and deliberate. Artists incised lines into hard stone with flint tools, creating relief and depth that captures movement and form. Some animals are rendered in dynamic motion, their bodies curved or overlapping, suggesting careful observation and an understanding of anatomy. Geometric shapes, sometimes juxtaposed with animal figures, hint at symbolic systems or proto-writing, though their exact meaning remains elusive. Did these abstract marks encode hunting strategies, clan identity, or cosmological knowledge? Or were they purely aesthetic, celebrating the forms of the natural world? The absence of direct interpretation leaves us with awe and speculation in equal measure. Environmental context is equally compelling. The Coa River, fed by tributaries and surrounded by steep cliffs, provided a rich ecosystem of game, fish, and edible plants. The open-air sites may have been selected for visibility, ceremonial prominence, or as territorial markers, communicating presence or prowess to neighboring groups. Some researchers have suggested that the river itself, its meanders, pools, and seasonal rhythms, held spiritual or symbolic significance, perhaps guiding the placement of images or the subjects chosen for depiction. Were these engravings a form of early ritual, intended to influence hunting success, seasonal cycles, or social cohesion? The scale and density of the engravings suggest organized activity. Certain panels show multiple figures, overlapping and interacting, implying coordination among artists or repeated engagement over time. Traces of repeated carving, polishing, and maintenance suggest that these sites were revisited and cared for, much like sacred spaces in later cultures. Could the Koa Valley have functioned as a pilgrimage site, a teaching ground, or a ceremonial hub where communities came together to observe, participate, or reinforce social bonds? The ambiguity invites contemplation, as it provides no definitive answers but a profound sense of continuity and intention. One of the most intriguing aspects of the Koa Valley engravings is the relationship between human and animal imagery. Large herbivores dominate the panels, depicted in proportions and motion that capture vitality and life. Some images of humans appear small, isolated, or abstracted, suggesting that early humans may have conceptualized themselves relative to the animal world differently than later societies. Were these representations a form of respect, invocation, or negotiation with the forces of nature? Did they communicate myths, shared stories, or lessons about survival and cooperation? Or were they part of an aesthetic sensibility, celebrating the vitality and power of the creatures that sustained them? Speculative interpretations abound. Some suggest that the valley functioned as a ritual landscape, where art, natural features, and human activity were intertwined. Others propose that patterns in the arrangement of figures correspond to astronomical or seasonal cycles, encoding environmental knowledge for practical or symbolic purposes. Fringe theories even hint at lost symbolic systems, suggesting that the abstract signs may represent early attempts at communication or proto-writing. While none of these ideas can be proven conclusively, they underscore the depth and sophistication of human thought preserved in the engravings. Walking along the cliffs of the Koa today, one is struck by the interplay of time, stone, and landscape. The wind scours the rock faces, sunlight shifts across engraved contours, and the river below carries the same waters that flowed past thousands of years ago. In this setting, it is easy to imagine the Paleolithic artists at work, scraping stone, observing wildlife, and perhaps performing gestures or rituals to accompany their creations. The engravings are both intimate and monumental, personal and collective, a dialogue between humans, nature, and time that continues silently into the present. The Koa Valley, like Sanai Maruyama, Valdivia, and Tel Es Sultan, illustrates that human creativity and symbolic thinking are not bound by urbanization, writing, or metallurgy. Even hunter-gatherer communities, moving seasonally across landscapes, could produce lasting cultural expression that encodes observation, skill, and belief. The engravings remind us that the earliest humans were not only survivalists, but also keen observers, storytellers, and participants in a symbolic world. The stones themselves become witnesses, preserving intention, artistry, and memory across millennia. As evening settles over the rugged cliffs and winding river, casting long shadows over engraved horses, aurochs, and abstract symbols, one is left with a sense of awe and mystery. The Koa Valley Paleolithic sites endure not just as stone carvings, but as questions carved into the earth itself. What guided the hands of the artists? What beliefs, social structures, or rituals shaped their work? And what else remains hidden, perhaps beneath eroded rock or buried sediment, waiting to reveal new dimensions of human ingenuity tens of thousands of years ago? The valley preserves these questions in stone and landscape, inviting us to contemplate the origins of symbolic thought and the enduring relationship between humans and the natural world. From the windswept cliffs and river-carved rocks of Portugal's Koa Valley, where Paleolithic engravings whisper across time, our journey now turns south to the rugged coastline of South Africa, where the Clayses River mouth site rests in quiet, eroded dunes and rocky outcrops along the Indian Ocean. Here, amidst a landscape of crashing surf, wind-sculpted sandstone, and shifting sands, archaeologists have uncovered one of the most profound windows into early modern human life, stretching back more than 120,000 years. Unlike the open-air carvings of the Koa Valley, Klassi's river mouth offers insight not only into artistic expression, but also into the very survival, adaptation, and cognitive complexity of Homo sapiens during the Middle and Late Stone Ages. The site is immediately striking. Layers of sediment and ash, compacted over millennia, tell a story of repeated habitation. Hearths blackened with smoke, scattered flint tools, shells from shellfish beds, and bones of hunted animals. In some areas, the remains of semi-subterranean shelters hint at the earliest forms of structured living spaces, while nearby caves provide refuge from storms and predators. It is easy to imagine the waves breaking against the shore, the wind whipping across the dunes, and the inhabitants moving between shore, forest, and inland areas in search of food, water, and shelter. How did these early humans perceive and negotiate such a variable and sometimes hostile landscape? What strategies allowed them not only to survive, but to thrive across generations? Archaeological excavations reveal extraordinary evidence of subsistence and social organization. The midden deposits contain shells, fish bones, and large mammal remains, demonstrating a diet that combined coastal and terrestrial resources. The presence of well-crafted stone tools, including blades, scrapers, and points, indicates sophisticated technological knowledge adapted to multiple environments. But beyond survival, Klassi's river mouth offers glimpses into symbolic and cognitive behavior. The careful placement of hearths, the collection of ochre pigments, and evidence for long-distance transport of materials suggest that these early humans were capable of planning, communication, and abstract thought. What role did symbolism play in daily life? Did the use of pigments mark identity, social status, or ritual practice? Perhaps the most striking discoveries at Klassi's river mouth are the human remains, which have provided some of the earliest evidence for anatomical modernity. Skull fragments, jawbones, and teeth indicate populations with features closely aligned with contemporary Homo sapiens, yet also show remarkable variation, hinting at evolutionary experimentation and adaptation. Some skulls bear marks of careful preparation or ritual modification, raising questions about early mortuary practices. Were these modifications practical, aesthetic, or symbolic? Did they communicate identity, social rank, or spiritual belief? The remains challenge us to imagine not only how these people lived, but how they understood themselves as humans in a vast, dynamic world. The site also reveals behavioral complexity, extending far beyond mere survival. Evidence of hearths arranged in clusters suggests communal living and coordinated activity. The repeated use of certain locations, sometimes over tens of thousands of years, implies knowledge transmission and social memory. Ochre fragments, occasionally ground and powdered, hint at symbolic or decorative behavior, perhaps applied to bodies, tools, or other surfaces. What meanings did these pigments hold? Were they used in ritual, for communication, or simply for aesthetic expression? The answers remain uncertain, yet their presence underscores cognitive sophistication and cultural nuance. Environmental adaptation was central to life at Klassi's river mouth. The site sits at the interface of ocean, estuary, and terrestrial ecosystems, offering abundant resources but also demanding flexibility. Seasonal shifts in water levels, tides, and weather patterns would have required careful observation and planning. Archaeologists have found evidence of systematic exploitation of shellfish beds, suggesting knowledge of tidal cycles and species behavior, alongside hunting strategies for terrestrial game. Did early humans develop cultural rules or traditions to manage these complex interactions with nature? Could some of the symbolic or ritual behaviors be interpreted as ways of negotiating, honoring, or understanding these environmental forces? Speculative interpretations of Classy's river mouth highlight the cognitive leaps evident in its record. Some researchers suggest that the organization of space, use of pigments, and structured disposal of waste hint at early forms of social governance or ritualized behavior. Others propose that symbolic objects and pigment use indicate proto-religious or cosmological thought, reflecting abstract reasoning and planning. The site's longevity implies cultural continuity. Knowledge and practices were transmitted across generations, forming traditions that may have shaped human evolution itself. Could these behaviors be seen as the earliest seeds of human culture, language, and complex society? The relationship between humans and their environment at Classy's river mouth also evokes profound questions. The coastal setting, rich in marine resources, may have fostered both settlement and symbolic thinking. Did proximity to the ocean influence spiritual or cosmological beliefs? Did the ebb and flow of tides become a rhythm for ritual, reflection, or storytelling? And how did these early humans perceive the interplay between land, sea, and sky, a perception that informed not only survival but also creativity and imagination? Walking across the site today, one is struck by the palimpsest of human life embedded in sediment and stone. Each layer tells a story: hearths blackened with smoke, flint flakes scattered like breadcrumbs of thought, shells crushed under ancient feet, ochre dust clinging to stone. In this layered archive, we glimpse not just survival, but adaptation, planning, and symbolic engagement with the world. How did these communities transmit knowledge across generations, ensuring that skills, traditions, and symbolic practices endured? What role did storytelling, ritual, and shared memory play in shaping both identity and survival strategies? Classia's river mouth, like Koa Valley, Sanai Maruyama, and Valdivia, reminds us that early human societies were simultaneously practical, creative, and reflective. Monumental architecture is not necessary to reveal sophistication. Behavioral patterns, tool use, symbolic objects, and mortuary practices provide evidence of intelligence, cooperation, and imagination. The site illustrates that humans at the dawn of modernity were capable of foresight, planning, and abstract thought, creating cultural expressions that still resonate across time. As the sun dips toward the Indian Ocean horizon, casting long shadows over dunes, boulders, and ancient hearths, one is left with a sense of both continuity and mystery. The people of Classy's river mouth shaped a landscape and left traces of life, survival, and thought that endure far beyond the millennia. Yet countless questions remain. How did early Homo sapiens conceptualize self, community, and environment? What rituals, beliefs, or knowledge guided daily life? And what secrets are still buried beneath sand and stone, waiting to reveal the cognitive and cultural sophistication of these early humans? Classy's river mouth preserves these questions in sediment, shell, and stone, inviting contemplation of our shared origins, the ingenuity of our species, and the mysteries of human evolution that endure quietly, patiently, along the southern African coast. From the windswept southern African coast, where early modern humans at Classy's river mouth left traces of adaptation, ritual, and symbolic expression, our journey now sweeps across continents and deserts to the vast Libyan Sahara, where the rocky outcrops of Uan Muhugiag conceal secrets of early human ingenuity and belief. Nestled amid rugged sandstone cliffs and hidden valleys, this archaeological site offers a window into life in the Sahara when the desert was not an arid expanse, but a mosaic of lakes, rivers, and fertile plains. Here, thousands of years ago, human communities thrived, leaving behind tools, ceremonial spaces, and enigmatic artifacts that continue to challenge our understanding of prehistoric Africa. The site itself is deceptively quiet. Jagged rock formations rise from sandy floors, casting long shadows across clusters of stone debris and scattered hearths. Archaeologists uncover layered deposits of occupation, remnants of hearths, stone tools, pottery shards, and occasionally the bones of domesticated cattle. Among these finds, perhaps the most captivating is the Tefenog-style rock art and ceremonial spaces, preserved under sheltering rock ledges or hidden in alcoves, their meanings obscured by time. Standing at Uan Muhugiag today, one senses the intentionality of human presence, a place carefully chosen for habitation, ritual, and expression, where both survival and symbolic life unfolded in tandem. Dating the site reveals extraordinary longevity. Evidence points to human occupation from at least 8,000 BC, when the Sahara supported lakes, rivers, and abundant vegetation, providing a rich environment for hunter-gatherer and early pastoralist communities. By 4000 BC, the climate began to shift toward aridity, yet the people of Uan Muhugiag persisted, adapting their strategies to the changing landscape. Their resilience speaks to remarkable knowledge of environmental dynamics, subsistence planning, and social organization. How did these communities track rainfall, seasonal migrations of game, and the availability of fresh water? And how did environmental pressures shape their social structures, ritual practices, and artistic expression? The rock shelters of Uan Muhugiag reveal the complexity of both domestic and symbolic life. Hearths are carefully arranged, sometimes in clusters, suggesting communal gathering and deliberate spatial organization. Grinding stones, flint blades, and bone tools indicate sophisticated subsistence strategies, including processing of plants, hunting, and fishing in a landscape now lost to desertification. Yet beyond practicality, traces of ceremonial activity emerge. Stone arrangements and rock art suggest that these spaces were also venues of ritual, storytelling, and cultural expression. Did certain alcoves serve as sacred sites for initiation, rites of passage, or communication with ancestral spirits? Or were they simply places for contemplation and social cohesion? Among the most extraordinary finds at Uan Muhugiag is the cemetery and evidence of mummification. Human remains, some intentionally wrapped or placed in defined positions, point to complex mortuary practices far earlier than typically expected in Saharan contexts. These burials suggest that inhabitants conceived of death not merely as an end, but as a transition, an event requiring care, ritual, and perhaps belief in an afterlife. Some graves include personal ornaments, tools, or figurines, hinting at a symbolic life that extended beyond the physical. What guided these practices? How did they shape social identity, familial memory, or intergenerational knowledge transmission? Pottery fragments add another layer of intrigue. Shards of finely decorated clay vessels, often with geometric patterns or incised designs, indicate both functional and aesthetic purpose. Some vessels were likely used for storage, others for ceremonial or ritual contexts, and some may have served as markers of status or identity within the group. What narratives or symbolic meanings were encoded in these patterns? Did the decoration communicate clan affiliation, cosmological understanding, or a sophisticated sense of artistry? And how did such objects influence daily life, from food preparation to ritual observance? Subsistence strategies at Uan Muhugiag demonstrate remarkable flexibility. Early inhabitants relied on a combination of hunting, fishing, and plant gathering, transitioning in later periods to pastoralism as the climate shifted. Domesticated cattle appear in the archaeological record, marking one of the earliest instances of Saharan pastoralism. Faunal remains reveal selective hunting of both large and small game, while botanical residues suggest knowledge of edible plants, seeds, and tubers. How did these strategies evolve in response to a gradually drying landscape? And how did the integration of pastoralism influence social organization, ritual practices, and symbolic life? And Rock art at Uan Muhugiag is perhaps the most evocative element, blending human, animal, and abstract forms into a tapestry that resists easy interpretation. Painted and engraved figures depict cattle, wild fauna, and enigmatic anthropomorphic forms. Some images appear in sequences, suggesting narrative or movement, while others seem isolated, emphasizing particular animals or symbolic motifs. Certain panels depict hunting scenes, while others may record ceremonial or ritual events. Were these images intended to record history, influence spiritual or natural forces, or communicate knowledge to others? Did they serve educational, mnemonic, or symbolic functions within the community? The ceremonial and symbolic dimension of Uan Muhugiag invites further reflection. Some rock art is located in difficult-to-access areas, implying that reaching these spaces may have been part of ritual practice or initiation. Other features, such as stone circles or aligned boulders, hint at deliberate structuring of space for social or cosmological purposes. Could some arrangements correspond to seasonal changes, celestial observation, or ancestral commemoration? Might these practices have guided hunting strategies, agricultural cycles, or social organization? While definitive answers elude us, the integration of artistic, spatial, and functional elements reflects a sophisticated and intentional culture. Speculative theories also emerge around Uan Muhugiag's mummification and funerary practices. The presence of prepared burials, sometimes accompanied by pottery or ornaments, raises questions about beliefs regarding the afterlife, spirit, or cosmology. Were these early forms of ritualized burial influenced by symbolic systems now lost? Did they communicate lineage, status, or social cohesion? The combination of domestic, artistic, and mortuary evidence suggests a society in which practical life and symbolic thought were inseparable, where survival and spirituality coexisted in delicate balance. Walking across the rocky shelters today, one senses the layered complexity of human life preserved in stone and sediment. Hearths, tools, pottery shards, and engraved rock walls speak of adaptation, ingenuity, and imagination. One can imagine families tending fire, artisans shaping clay or flint, hunters returning with game, and ceremonial activities unfolding in alcoves bathed in shifting light. Uan Muhugiag exemplifies the integration of survival, culture, and symbolism, demonstrating that even early human societies in what is now one of the harshest deserts on Earth were capable of cognitive sophistication, social coordination, and symbolic expression. Uan Muhugiag, like Klazi's river mouth, Koa Valley, and Sanai Maruyama, illustrates that human intelligence, creativity, and cultural depth predate cities, written language, and metallurgy. Monumental architecture is not required to reveal complexity. Symbolic behavior, careful settlement, artistic expression, and mortuary practices all attest to profound cognitive capacities. These early Saharan communities understood, shaped, and negotiated their environment, leaving enduring traces in stone, bone, and pigment that continue to challenge modern interpretation. As the Sahara sun dips low over eroded cliffs, casting long shadows across rock shelters and painted alcoves, one is left with a sense of both continuity and mystery. The people of Uan Muhugiag survived, adapted, and expressed themselves in ways that continue to resonate across millennia. Yet, as with so many ancient sites, questions remain. How did early humans conceptualize death, ritual, and social hierarchy? What knowledge, beliefs, or symbolic practices guided their daily and ceremonial life? And what else lies hidden beneath layers of sand, sediment, and stone, waiting to reveal more about the cognitive and cultural sophistication of these Saharan pioneers? Uan Muhugiag preserves these mysteries in stone, clay, and human remains, inviting reflection on the resilience, creativity, and symbolic depth of early humans, long before the emergence of civilization as we typically define it. The site reminds us that the story of humanity is not linear, centralized, or uniform. It is layered, dispersed, and often hidden in the quiet, enduring traces left by people who observed, adapted to, and imagined the world around them. The Sahara, now an expanse of sand and wind, was once a living, vibrant canvas for human ingenuity, a canvas that continues to provoke awe, contemplation, and a deep sense of wonder at the origins of our species. From the arid expanse of the Libyan Sahara, where communities at Ouan Muhugiag left enduring traces of adaptation, ritual, and symbolic sophistication, our journey now drifts across the Mediterranean to the rugged hills of Sardinia, an island steeped in prehistoric mystery. Here, amid rolling plains and limestone ridges, rises the enigmatic Monte da Codi, a monumental structure unlike anything else in Europe, its stepped platform and singular design drawing the gaze upward, as if connecting earth and sky in a dialogue lost to time. Unlike the shelters of Ouan Muhugiag, which conceal human life and ritual in alcoves and layers of sediment, Monte da Codi announces itself on the landscape, a silent sentinel, its presence both architectural and symbolic, challenging interpretation and inviting reflection. The substructure itself is immediately arresting. A massive platform, roughly rectangular, rises from the surrounding plains, composed of limestone blocks carefully stacked to form a stepped pyramid-like base. Atop this platform rests a smaller, altar-like construction, its purpose ambiguous but deliberate. The architecture suggests planning, labor coordination, and an understanding of spatial geometry that is remarkable for its time, dated broadly between 4000 and 3000 BC, contemporaneous with early Neolithic developments elsewhere in the Mediterranean. Its isolation and unique design provoke questions about intention. Why this particular location? Why this form? And what function did it serve within the communities of Sardinia? Excavations reveal multiple layers of activity beneath and surrounding the substructure. Ceramics, obsidian fragments, and stone tools indicate that the site was occupied and used over extended periods. Charcoal remnants suggest ritual fires, while traces of animal sacrifice, possibly including sheep or goats, hint at ceremonial practices that may have combined spiritual, social, and economic dimensions. Could these rituals have been designed to secure fertility of land and livestock, to honor celestial cycles, or to communicate with unseen forces? And why is the form of the structure, stepped, platformed, altar-like, so singular within Sardinian or Mediterranean architecture? Monte da Codi's architectural features invite a range of interpretations. The stepped platform resembles, in some ways, the ziggurats of Mesopotamia, though its scale and context are distinct. Its orientation appears deliberate, potentially aligned with solstitial or lunar events, though scholars debate the precision and intent of these alignments. Was the structure a ceremonial platform for astronomical observation, a site of public ritual, or a symbolic representation of cosmology itself? Could it have served multiple purposes simultaneously, blending the practical, spiritual, and social in ways that modern categories struggle to capture? The discovery of ritual deposits adds further intrigue. Buried beneath the platform and in surrounding trenches are fragments of finely crafted pottery, stone tools, and occasionally worked bone. These objects suggest purposeful placement, perhaps offerings, that indicate an understanding of symbolic exchange and ritualized deposition. Some archaeologists propose that these deposits served to consecrate the site, marking stages of construction, renewal, or cyclical observance. Were these early attempts to communicate with the divine, with ancestors, or with forces of nature? And how did such acts shape the social cohesion and identity of the community that built and maintained Monte da Codi? Human and animal imagery is largely absent from the structure itself, yet the symbolism embedded in its architecture may carry meaning analogous to figurative art. The massive platform elevates the altar above the surrounding plain, creating a sense of prominence and visibility. Stepped forms inherently suggest ascent, progression, or hierarchical relationships, perhaps reflecting cosmological notions of earth, sky, and the intermediary space of ritual. Was the act of climbing these steps itself symbolic? A ritual performance meant to transform participants or mark transition? And does the singularity of Monte de Codi imply a localized innovation, or might it reflect broader Mediterranean influences now obscured by time? The site's context within the landscape further enhances its mystery. Situated on a low hill with clear views of surrounding plains, the structure would have dominated its environment, visible from considerable distances. This prominence suggests that Monte de Codi functioned as a communal focal point, a place where people gathered for shared ceremonies or seasonal events. Nearby deposits of obsidian, sourced from distant islands or mainland territories, indicate exchange networks and movement across the Mediterranean. How did these connections influence ritual practice, architecture, or belief? Could Monte de Codi represent a convergence of local innovation and broader cultural currents, merging indigenous Sardinian tradition with influences from across the sea? Speculation about the function of the site extends to celestial observation. The alignment of the steps and the orientation of the altar may have corresponded to solar or lunar events, marking seasonal changes crucial to agrarian or pastoral cycles. In an era when survival depended on careful timing for planting, herding, or harvesting, might Monte de Codi have served as a calendar or ceremonial observatory? Could the structure itself have encoded knowledge of astronomical cycles, allowing early Sardinian communities to synchronize social and economic activities with natural rhythms? Monte de Codi also challenges assumptions about the scale of Neolithic societies in Sardinia. The construction required organization, labor, and technical knowledge, implying social coordination beyond the family or small clan. Planning, quarrying, transporting, and assembling limestone blocks suggest the presence of specialized labor, leadership, and perhaps ritual authority. How did these early communities organize themselves to achieve such architectural feats? Did the process of building Monte de Codi serve as a mechanism for social cohesion, reinforcing collective identity, or demonstrating hierarchical authority? Even as excavation reveals tools, pottery, and structural remains, many questions endure. The precise ritual significance of the site is unknown. The altar atop the platform, while evocative, has yielded no direct inscriptions or symbolic art that might clarify its purpose. Were the rituals performed here directed toward deities, ancestors, celestial bodies, or abstract forces? Did participants enter trance states, engage in seasonal rites, or perform ceremonies tied to birth, death, and renewal? Each hypothesis highlights human ingenuity while underscoring the vast gaps in our knowledge. Walking across Monte de Codi today, one is struck by the sense of both permanence and mystery. The structure endures as a silent testament to human creativity, labor, and symbolic thought, yet it resists interpretation. The stones, weathered by millennia, have witnessed countless sunrises and sunsets, the passage of seasons, and the ebb and flow of human activity. From its builders to later generations who may have revered, abandoned, or repurposed it. The site preserves the tension between what can be known through material evidence and what remains beyond reach, embedded in ritual, belief, and memory. Monte de Codi, like Uan Muhugiag, Klasi's river mouth, and the other sites explored in this journey, reminds us that human history is a layered tapestry of survival, symbolism, and creativity. Monumental architecture is not merely a statement of power. it is also a medium of social cohesion, ritualized practice, and cognitive innovation. The structure embodies an understanding of space, form, and visibility, coupled with human imagination and purposeful action. Its existence challenges modern assumptions about Neolithic Sardinia, highlighting the sophistication of communities often overlooked in global narratives. As evening descends over the Sardinian plains, the long shadows of the stepped platform stretch across the landscape, and the site seems to whisper its silent testimony that ancient humans, separated from us by millennia, engaged with their environment, their cosmos, and each other in ways both practical and symbolic. Monte de Codi preserves questions as much as it preserves stone. What rituals took place here, and what did they mean? How did the builders conceive of space, form, and the connection between earth and sky? And what, if anything, remains hidden beneath its stones, waiting to reveal new dimensions of Neolithic thought and practice? Monte de Codi stands as a bridge between epochs, connecting us to humans who lived, labored, and imagined in ways simultaneously familiar and unknowable. It challenges us to consider the origins of ritual, architecture, and symbolic expression, while humbling us with the realization that the human drive to shape the world, physically, socially, and spiritually, has deep roots. The structure's singularity, endurance, and enigmatic purpose invite contemplation, curiosity, and wonder, reminding us that